Well, hello everyone again. How goes it?
Hello.
Hello, indeed.
Good to be back on the air, isn't it? Alrighty. Well, we have had just such an evening. Hillel has not made it into the group yet. We're hoping to see him shortly. He suffered through this foolishness tonight as well. And, that was an awfully impressive feat, trust me. Anyway, we will start off with in case anyone has not seen the trailer for this film, uh, we'll give you a little showing here, and then we'll start talking about it.
For over 150 years, one convincing lie has prevented billions from knowing the truth. The truth about who they are. The truth about why they're here. And most important, the truth about who created them.
Really, we only have two possibilities. We just happened, or somebody made us.
On November 13th,
I was really taught that there was a big bang. There was millions of years. Man slowly evolved.
Evolution has a lot of unintended consequences that I'm not sure everyone's thought about.
You have no meaning. There's no reason for you to exist.
When you start buying into evolution, you've opened a door to say you don't have to trust the Bible completely.
Evolution in millions of years is the greatest myth ever forced on the minds of men.
It's not science versus religion. It's a worldview clash.
explore the evidence. Experience the creation. And discover the truth. The truth will set you free. Genesis, Paradise Lost. Tickets are available for this special event at genesismovie.com.
I cannot, in good conscience, recommend anyone avail themselves to that. Yes, the
Well, I
tickets
think
are
they've got a
available.
limited number of showings, so get your tickets while you can. Yeah, Fino asked if it's graphical design by Jeranism. I was reminded of the same thing. The disintegrating Earth versus the disintegrating Darwin bust.
Yeah, the graphics
like
were very
Alfred
good.
Wallace.
Hmm.
Couldn't they
Production-
at
I thought
least
the graphics
destroy
were good.
Alfred Wallace's bust along with him?
Production value was definitely there. Wouldn't you say, Jackson?
Oh,
Oh yeah, definitely. I thought the scenery was very nice. All the very bizarre creation events. It was like the whirlpool or the giant like water tornadoes forming in the ocean, which created the sea life, or the giant dust storm that created humans and animals and whatnot. It was so bizarre. I guess is this, I guess, the modern version of God creating things?
Apparently,
It's very interesting.
Yeah, apparently they had to flash it up a bit. That was the one that really caught my eye. Was the minor tornado event creating Adam? It's like you mentioned, a big dust swirl, and then it made some bones, and then some feet showed up, and then poof, you got an Adam.
Oh yeah, we were
Yeah,
laughing
that
about that.
would be winging it because there's no scriptural authority for that. There's no precedent for that in creationist apologetics.
Wait a minute. Are you saying
Hugh Ross
they?
over in old evolution land simply accepts the idea that God did a ribectomy on Adam and did a biopsy and did genetic engineering. I'm not making this up. So that's about as detailed as he gets. But no, the tornado version of God making human beings, that one's a novel
That's
visual
new.
image.
Yeah.
I
Well,
love
see,
that.
Savannah and I, while we were watching it, we were wondering what version, what translation they were using, because they were kind of pulling sentences in the Bible out of the air. I mean, some of the, you hear, because you've read it enough times from different posts and the Bible itself, and then you listen to these guys tell it in their non-Morgan Freeman deep-voiced God character.
Yes, as we learn the truth.
And he starts kind of adding sentences in there.
Yeah.
And so, and he said one of the things that caught my ear was he said whales. He said it was referring to the creatures of the deep or the sea. He says whales at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that for a moment, and I know exactly what they mistranslated, I should say, and why they mistranslated it that way.
Leviathan?
I think it's very. No, they're actually referring to in Genesis. It says, I think tenonym. I think is how it's how it looks like, at least. And this word means sea monsters. When God creates all the creatures of the ocean, He creates sea monsters, which is what tenonym is. But the New International Version, as well as other versions, I'm sure, will translate that as animals of the deep, or in this case, whales, because in ancient Mesopotamia, sea monsters were generally associated with creation myths, and so clearly creationists would see the theological problems in having these sea monsters, which appear in other creation myths, appearing in their own, and so
well, they copied a lot from the
retranslation
Babylonians, so that wouldn't surprise me there either. Another thing that strikes me that will be fun to see how this falls out is the extent to which Eric Hovind is reflecting the weird theology of his dad, because Hovind is not highly regarded in the Answers in Genesis ICR set, even though you just had a pile up of talking heads from both of those organizations in this video. So how much of it are ones where they weren't necessarily approving of the finished product? I know Paul Nelson, who's in the intelligent design movement, he had a conniption fit over how he regarded himself as being misquoted in a creationist movie, even though he's a young earth creationist. So some of these things may have lasting consequences that I'm not sure Eric is aware of.
Oh, they were throwing Kent Hovind theology out there. The whole Lucy was just a chimp.
Indeed, Lucy was just a chimp. Oh, and back to the whole Adam thing. After Adam dropped out of a tornado, looking oddly European, in my opinion. Did you notice?
You don't expect it to look like a black person, do you?
No, certainly not. I don't know. That's crazy talk. But they went from that Adam dropping out of a tornado, which is definitely biblical. No adding to God's word there, because
it's also a Wizard of Ozzy. I think where's Toto when you need her?
You know what Ken Ham says about adding to the words of God: "Thou shalt not."
Oh yeah.
So anyway, right? Okay, tornado makes Adam, right?
Right.
And then the very next scene, there's two people strolling down.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Eve just happens onto the scene because they quoted Genesis 1, which is kind of odd concerning Genesis 2, but oh well, I guess.
Yeah, we don't want to get fiddly bit about the fact that the two Genesis accounts are contradictory as to how Eve came on the scene.
They go with the whole he created. Even though they put down Adam first, they immediately say thereafter, even though they don't show the creation of the female, they say God created them men and women.
Yeah, and if I remember from the whole biblical thing, Adam was very upset because he didn't he didn't want to be buddies with any of the animals, and he was all kinds of lonely. So then God thought it would be a cool idea to give him a mate, right? Am I
Yeah, I mean, and this
okay,
is
hold
over a
on
period of
1
24
second.
hours, you know.
Yeah,
So Adam
right.
apparently has short-term issues.
He gets moody quick. All right, now, okay, so,
Yeah.
so what this implies, it doesn't imply it, it says it, is that Adam was created with the assumption that he was going to be just fine on his own, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, why did he have a penis?
And apparently God was such an incompetent designer that he could create Adam without recognizing the fact that Adam is going to be so lonely for that first day.
Indeed. And
Darn, he's of a different kind than all these other primates. What was I thinking?
And yeah, and I would question, since no changes were made after the rib thievery, why was he created with a penis? If there is
Nipples. I mean, you know, let's think about the whole, and let's not even go into ALUs in the genome. I mean, boy, that's getting way past their pay grade.
Indeed, and yeah, I kind of wondered about that. And the tornado makes Adam, and then there were two of them. What do you mean there were two of them? Was there another tornado? No, the whole rib thing. You didn't say anything about a rib thing. All right. Anyway, okay.
And the Mormons could say, "Oh, a tornado making Adam. We're not in Missouri anymore."
Indeed.
With white Jesus. Yeah.
And let's see. I think there was a comment I wanted to get back to. Talk amongst yourselves. Continue from that point. Let me just get back to it because there was one I did.
Yeah, Fino wants to know, did God have a wide creation? Question. I don't know. Maybe we could get a paternity test on that Joseph character.
Yeah, the whole creation event thing was just so bizarre.
That's it.
Very interesting.
Yeah, found it. It was who I thought it was. Memes are cancer, our good friend. Says, wait, so that means a tornado swept through the earth and all the atoms came together and formed an anatomically correct human. Proof the creationists believe the
like a tornado in a junkyard.
Exactly,
you know, I realize that actually is an ironic image for them to choose.
Yep.
Where's Fred Hoyle when you need him?
Yep. Nice call.
That is a good idea. That is a really good idea. Wow.
That's don't worry. If we missed it and Memes Are Cancer missed it, Paul would have noticed. Definitely. Alrighty. Yeah, I just wanted to get back to that one because that would be one we would not want to miss. Alrighty.
I thought Tornado Pelt says, "Sai, I really want to join the fun on this one. Did someone say tornado?"
I thought it was really funny. Savannah and I laughed out loud when we heard the pterosaur flying through the air and then just screeches because they've got like all these very mild, normal animals. You know, you've got geese and some ducks, and there's like an elephant sound at one point or another. And then, then they have the pterosaur just like cawing. As
and describe the pterosaur. Is it like your big, wide-winged pterodactyl type?
It had no head ornamentation, so I've just been calling it a pterodactyl.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's not as though they're trying to give us the impression that there were way fewer pterosaurs than we actually know exist, and about which we know so much about their natural evolution.
Yeah, they did not really. They honestly didn't cover biodiversity a whole lot. I think the whole concept of kinds was really only touched in passing as kind of a thumbing their nose at the evolutionists. There really was no proactive research or information presented on it.
But did you notice the
as you know already,
the psychological goings on of constantly
if they had
repeating.
To actually start diving into baraminology. So I could see why Eric in particular is not really going to want to get into it. Like, does he bother about that stuff? Nah.
RJ, Ethernet. Ethernet.
I must be out of the joke.
You may not be familiar with that. We kind of doubled there. We on movie nights we use the Ethernet mentality. We listen to see if anyone is speaking. If not, then we start. If so, we wait a random amount of time after they have concluded. That's okay because I started the same time as you, and neither one of us stopped. Anyway, but
I wasn't hearing anything, so I jumped in.
Not a problem. Anyway, all right. Let's see. And for which one?
So the research on baraminology, they just kind of gave it the haha, where our stuff is correct, even though we're not going to tell you how or why. In that
Mm.
same vein, they also mentioned, with regard to genetics, the one kind. They said not only has never been observed or evidenced or whatever they say, they actually took it a step further and said a kind can't change into another.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
they
that's,
went out
that's
there and
implicit in the Barrowman. Yeah, but they actually
they
did use the
threw
word
down the gauntlet.
Barrowmanology.
And they didn't
No,
mention
they
it.
didn't. I don't think so.
No, they did
Not
not.
as
But
Yeah.
technically, their argument is correct. If we take the whole kinds thing, and if we extrapolate that there are only variations within kinds, then assuming a common ancestral, first common ancestor, first life to exist, if we assume that was the life kind, it never changed into any other kind. It diversified into
Yeah.
what we have today: dog kind, cat kind, and once you're a kind, you're stuck with it. You
Yeah,
can,
evolutionists would
exactly.
say the entire history of life is one gigantic monobarrowman.
And it's so what they say is actually correct. That if dogs change into cats, hey, evolution out the window. But their repetition of the word kinds was another. Didn't they do that commonly? Keep repeating it, get people used to it. It's another psychological trick they're using to.
Well, it's not even a matter of the getting it used to it. This would be the term that their audience would know. They're not going to have an audience familiar with speciation, and they certainly won't have an audience familiar with barrowmanology.
Oh,
None of them
absolutely
are
not.
going to have read Todd Wood. I mean, so it would be completely over their pay grade. So they use the common term that everybody knows, and that's the people in the audience can nod their heads and smile beatifically.
Oh yeah, they. I realized at one point. I mean, yeah, just looking at the audience, for one thing, they're just nodding. They're just kind of going along with it, nodding. They may not understand all the terms presented, but they're happy to hear it said at the very least. But some of this, they had Danny Faulkner, who was one of their quote experts, who aired one of his favorite argument about how the Earth is the center of the universe, because there are like concentric rings of
The shells of
nebula
galaxies.
and whatnot.
The shells of galaxies. Yes, he pulled that.
Yeah,
one
and
out.
so I remember there was a King Crocoduck video that that kind of blew that argument up, wasn't there?
Indeed. Yes, and that is actually was also in my scribbled notes. You know what else he pulled? That was my big line I was supposed to mention at the beginning of all of this, is how many shoehorns lost their lives in the creation of this movie because of the shoehorning of the Bible into modern discoveries. The next one on my list was the God stretching out the heavens, stretching
That
out.
was
And
that was what I wanted. I'm glad we came back to that.
Absolutely, he tied that to redshift. See, they're still stretching. Well, look, read your book. Stretched.
Yeah.
Past
This
tense.
is the post hoc retrofit.
Yes,
That made me. That was one of the things that got me upset towards the end, because that was relatively near the end of the movie when they brought that up, which is kind of funny because Ken Ham made a comment about how it sounds like he dismisses the concept of cosmic expansion in one sentence, and then you have Danny Faulkner who says, "Oh, there's this great thing, cosmic expansion. It proves exactly what we predicted all these years ago." So I'm a little confused.
Continuity problems
to what the message was.
This is
there.
not uncommon. This is not at all uncommon in religious apologetics. If you go over to Intelligent Design Land and look at Lee Strobel, he would literally have together scholars. His own book are contradicting each other on biblical matters, and apparently he never bothers to notice it. So yeah, it wouldn't at all surprise me that Eric beater approach to apologetics is just kind of cherry picking stuff and not necessarily thinking through that they're actually talking about stuff that's mutually contradictory.
And so I just thought that was really funny. I'm not sure if anyone else in the audience caught that, but the other part of that caught my attention and gets me riled up is their retroactive, haha, we predicted this, and then the evolutionists.
Ooh, I want to hear about that.
I guess. So I mean, I think it's kind of funny because on one hand, they laugh at the evolutionists for not understanding science, and then in the same token, they take the research that the evolutionists have done and say this confirms what we've been saying. So whatever. But anyways, so Faulkner was talking about the prediction that the Bible supposedly made in Job, where the heavens were stretched out. Yeah, very easy, very, very easy to say retroactively we predicted this. When on our side of the aisle, on the other hand, we can look at some actual predictions that have been made, such as Tiktaalik, Spheca Diarthrognathes, Microraptor, and you know, etc.
The cosmic background radiation that was in effect a prediction of something that Hoyle was saying, you can't get your theory of Big Bang through unless you can manage to find that data. But the fun part is, if anyone would go through the history of it, would find exactly 0 people in all of the history of Christian apologetics who ever went through Job and said, oh, that stretching out of the heavens means that the stars are moving apart and things are expanding. You know, nobody ever thought of that until the 20th century, when they started observing redshifts because Mr. Hubble was looking at it through the new telescope. So it's not a prediction at all. It's a retrofitting.
I don't see where that's the case.
Mormons do the same thing.
Like I'm predicting snow last winter. Sort of like that is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
They also predicted supposedly tectonic plates when creationists were completely against tectonic plate movement.
Yeah. That was another entertaining part, that the Bible clearly references a single landmass. I must have missed that.
This one is one of the nastiest bits of retro-parasitism that has occurred in modern creationism, because I am the old fart in the room, and I remember old-style creationism in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And they absolutely rejected plate tectonics and continental drift. It was regarded as complete pseudoscience twaddle with no support for it whatsoever. Then in the 1990s, it became painfully obvious that because plate tectonics was explaining like everything in geology, it anymore, and you now reach the point when you've got at Ken Ham's stupid creation museum an actual picture where they try to argue that the pre-flood world was the Rhodinian supercontinent, and then there was a very quick phase, details pending, that the Pangea supercontinent collected together and spread back apart just in the time since the flood.
Yeah, which at the same time they're allowed to reject Kenorland and Columbia and Penosia and all the other supercontinents that have amassed over the ages.
And so here, work they do not do, they steal bits and pieces from and act as if they predicted it when their own literature says no such thing.
Indeed. And RJ, I wish you could have seen this movie at the same time. I'm very pleased that you were not tortured by this movie. They trotted out.
Well, remember, I have a high threshold of stupid.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
you know from the size of my bibliography how much crap I go through in the TIP project.
You would have stood on the chair and started shouting, "Where's Jaron? I know Jaron has something to do with this." That's what you would have done. But they trotted out. Spiral arms to the galaxy.
Oh yeah, they did.
That they're expecting them to behave in the same way as the milk on your coffee when you stir it, because they look the same, they must be the same. completely ignoring any talk.
Well, remember, it's called the Milky Way, so clearly you can use milk stirring as an analogy. You see, that's science.
That was the other Kent Hovind argument they brought up. The thing about how nebulae can't form stars because gases want to expand while the nebula, or while the gravity is pulling the nebula.
Yes, and they don't.
That
was a beautiful one.
This is exactly the equivalent of somebody who actually was a science. My favorite example of, oops, we're writing this too late, is when Simon Newcomb wrote a famous article in 1906 telling how heavier than air flight was impossible. This was, of course, 3 years after the Wright brothers had already taken off, and he didn't really know about this. Well, they're in that same boat. Excuse me, we've got the Hubble We've got all these new telescopes. We can see planetary systems forming. We can see stars forming. We can now, it's not a matter of guesstimation anymore. We've even gotten pictures of the Oort cloud now. We've got actual readings off of that on some of the latest Hubble data. So
Oh
they're
yeah.
just really behind the curve, probably because none of them actually do work in those fields.
Oh, hey, we have a question from Beej about the firmament.
Oh,
You want to take a side?
Actually, I was thinking about the comets and planets. I still got that into mind. Good, go,
Okay, all right.
go right
All right,
ahead.
well, we can get back to that, I guess. Or we can get back to the question of the firmament.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
fine.
keep going with that.
Oh, it's same thing. With they trotted out the spiral arms comets. We should have the
Oh, the
comets should all be
short-lived
gone.
comets. Yeah.
Yeah, because like they're in the time humans have been observing comets, it's those comets must be the same ones that existed at
That
the
had long
formation.
ago. Yeah, they had some.
Exactly.
So they had the material. I think also that I saw in the excerpts that Paul had put up about Neptune and the gas giants and stuff.
Yes. Yep. And Pluto
And
having
I actually went through and did a huge amount of science follow up on that, to where they were just decades behind the curve on the data stream on that one. It's just terrible.
Oh, that sums up the entire movie right there, RJ. They're
I would say.
decades
Yeah.
behind. They made some, and it wasn't even just the normal, dumb creationist arguments that they trotted out. They made some very bizarre arguments a few times. One of the things that caught my attention was one of them said, what was it, like 2 centuries ago, no one would have thought that we were descended from Australopithecus or something along those lines. And I thought, well, yeah, we didn't have those fossils 2 centuries ago.
It's a handy
It was such a
resource.
And yet
weird
Darwin
argument.
flat out predicted that you would find the human origins in Africa.
Yep.
Indeed. So yeah.
Shall I take firmament?
Oh yeah, well, it was funny, RJ, because whatever you're thinking about the firmament, it gets better. It is actually better than
Ooh.
whatever you're thinking.
Mm-hmm. What did they say in the movie about the firmament?
They didn't say one firmament. There were 3 different firmaments that they alluded to.
Ooh. They got like layers of things, like a big onion skin.
Well, that's the thing. The way they described it was kind of, one was the sky, one was outer space, and then there was one that was kind of between the sky and outer space.
It's the creamy nougat.
Yeah, and
it was,
each reference made no reference to the previous one, as if it had ever happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Pheno has brought up in Eric movie. It should comply with the Hovind theory of an ice canopy, shouldn't it? Pheno is actually bringing up a neat historical point that shows you how dated Kent Hovind is that the ice canopy is an old notion that a guy named Patterson came up with in the 1960s. I literally first heard about it from my physics teacher, who was kind of a closet creationist back in the 1960s up here in Spokane. But it's an idea that nobody takes seriously today in creationism circles. It's just a non-starter, except with somebody like Kent Hovind, whose brain congealed 30 years ago. And he relies on this old material that percolates through his notions. So he's revealing it the dated. He's like talking about phlogiston or monkey glands. I mean, it's just really dating him, and as to how far behind even creationism thinking he is.
Proto-Avis.
Yes, Proto-Avis. Yeah. We're talking a shop talk here on that one. Yeah, but the firmament. Yeah, the idea that there's on the fly what the flat earthers have to do. It's they've got to account for all those winkly things you can see up in the sky, and they've got to find some way of working it in. And it must, by definition, connect up with the scripture, because it must not merely be metaphorical poetry. It's got to be the true word of the God who designed it all. So they've got to find ways to kind of bend and twist and rearrange. And the moment they start getting literal, the moment they start making pictures and have to kind of draw out what they think happens, they fall into these traps, because they're trying to ram a Bronze Age mythology that didn't really think a damn thing about anything and turn it into something that actually looks graphical and scientific and predictive. And it can't work. It just won't ever work.
Indeed. And actually, Jackson, I know this one amused the hell out of you. It had to have. Since we're talking firmaments, let's get back to the beginning, because in the beginning, if you recall, God made light.
Mhm.
Then later on, He made sun and stars.
Yeah.
And they actually said in the movie that the reason for the order was that so we'd all know that God made the
Yes.
light, that God actually made the light. So the light was independent of the sun and stars.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they
And then
said
he
light
said,
didn't need a
right.
source.
And then he said, then
And,
put
and
the
they
sun
have
up
to
there.
do that because of the order of creation days,
Yes.
which, of course, those of us in the pesky history department say, excuse me, you borrowed this from the Babylonian Enuma Elish tales. They were the ones that came up with the order of creation. And when the Babylonian captivity occurred, the Hebrews borrowed an awful lot of that mythology, which included the sun and the moon and the stars being made after the earth. I think the Bible added in plant life as part of their sequence. But they're forced into it. They can't do any other than those sorts of circumlocutions. Now, over on intelligent design side, where they've got billions of years to play with, they take the let there be light thing. Oh, it just brings warmth to their little heart, because let there be light. There's initially light in the beginning of the universe from the radiation of the Big Bang and blah, blah, blah. And so your Ross types and people with at the Discovery Institute, they're just happy as clams
People with
to
other
have
shoehorns.
the let there be light. But it's still, in one way or another, is suddenly slamming into the Bible, because either the sequence doesn't match, which is the literalist approach, doesn't match if you take the non-literalist approach. Like, God forgets to tell you how many zeros there are between the let there be light and then let there be people.
Indeed. And don't worry, there was a disclaimer though, so that humans didn't get the wrong idea and worship the sun and all. There was a disclaimer that God wanted to warn us that the sun is just His tool. Since He made light, He wanted a tool to deliver it to us. So that's the sun, and therefore you shouldn't worship the sun like those other wacky dudes. You need your own imaginary thing to worship.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there
they
was a
did.
disclaimer.
I don't know how many of you are familiar with D. James Kennedy, who was a Florida preacher who died about 10 years ago now. And he was very much in the same mode as the Jerry Falwell types, and he did videos and a lot of things. And he was very, very popular. President Bush had a prayer meeting with him early in his administration and all that. Anyway, he, because he has the scientific literacy of a block of wood, he could therefore run off the gangplank very, very easily. And he literally bought into the idea that God made all of the constellations in the sky as signs and heavens of an illustrative cartoon of Jesus. So that literally the Virgo is actually the Virgin Mary, and Scorpio is actually Satan, and he goes on and on, and it does a fabulous example of misplaced concreteness, because of course we know that the constellations were worked out by largely the Greeks, often mistranslating the stuff that they got from the Babylonians and a lot of other stuff. And yet he literally thought that these star clusters were put out there to illustrate stuff. And that shows you where creationist astronomy goes if it has no breaks.
Oh, question in the public chat, and it's not really off topic. It all fits in. Convenient wants to know, did either of us have crazy creationists in the audience saying amen or hallelujah? Well, I'll tell you about my experience. Then Jackson can tell you his. No, we did not. There was just movie watching throughout the movie, and at the end there was a fair amount of clapping, which seemed sort of forced. But the thing I found the weirdest, since we're talking about the audience, is I got my tickets online because I figured every highly religious person in the state is going to hightail it for this theater because it's the only one close to here, so I better online them real quick. And I was lucky because the only seat that was left available was what's called a companion seat, which is if someone is in a wheelchair goes, the person that's with them gets that seat. So I was going to the thing knowing that if someone came in a wheelchair and they had someone with them, that person I'd be taking a walk and trying to catch the Thursday show instead of tonight's. that would be the right. That was the only seat available, and so it was booked, just booked solid. The theater was 1/3 empty. What does this imply? Does this imply that
Really?
that many people bought tickets and didn't show, or does it imply that as we now? I can't say this is not an accusation, but would that many people have bought tickets for this important event and just not shown up, or as we approached, closing in on it, is it conceivable that there may have been some sneakiness and so we better buy up the remaining seats and
Buy up the tickets to make sure that they look like they had sold out.
That didn't seem from the theater that I went to. I mean, we were in a fairly small auditorium, so mine was pretty crowded.
Well, you may have had the same number of people in the both showings. It just is that Psy was in a bigger venue, so they basically shot their wad. Whereas the number of people who really did want to see the show pretty much filled out the smaller venue.
Yeah, and that's a rough estimate, 1/3 empty, but it appeared either that, and there were much less children than when I went to that other horrid production, is Genesis History thing. That was
they'll get to have their poor little minds warped when they get the video.
Yeah, that was that theater was packed, and it was it just seemed like everybody brought their kid too. There were surprisingly few children at this showing. I don't know if I can attribute that to
what time was it? Well, yeah, it was just
7.
a few hours ago.
Yeah, it was 7. It was a reasonable time, but might have been a. But then again, it is
Christian parents.
Monday.
They didn't want to keep the kids up on a school night.
Yes, it is the middle. It is a Monday, so it is a homeschool night, isn't it?
Yes, it gave them
Yeah, I don't know. We saw a mother with her kid on Savannah's right side, but it was older, she says. But other than that, I guess I didn't notice. It's dark. It was dark. I can't see very well in the dark, even with my glasses on.
Night vision.
So there might have been. I'll keep that in mind. But yeah, mostly it was just a lot of adults though.
Did a lot of people have like popcorn and drinks and snacks and nibblies?
As far as I could tell, in my theater, I was the only one with the huge tub of popcorn. Everybody else.
Oh, so that means it may very well be that the venue is going to say, "Oh, we hate it when these damn creationist movies come in. Our sales of stuff drop like a rock, and all they do is go in and watch the stupid movie."
I don't know. Well, Savannah and I got popcorn. Of course, we were there just to laugh at it rather than. But I think the people on my left, which was a family, got popcorn, I believe. But they weren't chewing.
I would have had a notepad and I would have been taking notes, or usually my little pocket sheet. I always carry a normal piece of paper that I fold up into a little itty bitty bit that I can put in a pocket so I can write notes at a moment's notice. And that'll fit easily on just the armchair thing in a theater, so it's not a big problem that way. I don't have to carry a notepad or anything around with me.
I wish,
I would want to be taking notes of the humorous things. Just just out of horrible curiosity, what was the ticket price on this monstrosity?
Oh, you know what? I don't remember.
I think ours was around $40, wasn't it, Savannah? Yeah, around $40.
Whoa!
Each?
$20 a person?
For both of us.
Oh, okay, there. That's a little better. I think mine was like $15 or something like that.
No, yeah, we would not have paid $40 per person. The movie is not worth it.
No.
Even $20. That's really
I don't know. For most movies I go to, that seems
to see a movie in 3D.
I looked at it was a 3D movie where I tried to get the non-3D one because it was going to be easier to take notes, without looking under the glasses and all that. But the only showing was the 3D one. So I was look up 3D.
How was it in 3D?
Really, there wasn't that much that was like what you would call a dramatic effect in 3D. I mean,
even from my 2D, it didn't seem like it. Yeah.
No, it was.
Gee whiz! You'd think that the tornado making human beings would be a wonderful 3D effect. You could have somebody with a Bible being thrust at the screen. Salvation right in the front of the thing.
That was only the end of the movie.
Yeah.
They made the the altar call at the end.
Mm.
And that was when we realized, okay, thank goodness it's almost over.
Did you stay for the end the religious movie after show? Did you stay for that as well?
Was there one?
No,
yeah,
we
so-
saw, what is it? That was the end. We saw like To Be Continued or something like that. Then it started rolling Doctor
Oh,
such
you
and
missed
such,
it.
Doctor such and such, and we were like, okay, let's go.
You missed it. You missed it. That's what everybody in the theater bolted when the credits started coming by. There was more. Never leave until the house lights are up. You did.
Oh yeah,
the house lights were not up,
even
right?
in just a regular movie, I
Yeah.
love to stay all the way through the credits because occasionally there will be examples where
Yeah.
they'll stick an end bit into the credit
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
sequence.
And
we
how
do
you
that for
can-
Marvel
So you
movies.
want to
Yeah.
hold
But-
on that, yeah.
And how you can tell is if the house lights don't come up, there's something else coming. And in
Well,
this
yeah,
case,
but we were ready to go. We were ready to get out of there.
No, everybody bolted.
Gravy,
and,
let's get out of here.
And
Yeah, we were ready
I
to.
like to milk
Get out.
everything.
now they did an after show
Because
after all the
What
credits
was
were
it?
gone. It was Eric.
After show.
Eric was the star of the show, and in the end they had five little chairs. It was sort of like movie night, except no drunks and no obscenities. But he had
and zero information content.
and oh jeez, yeah. But yeah, and then Ham was there, and Ray Comfort was
Nobody.
there, and what's her name? Dr. Smiler and Nodder.
Purdom?
Purdom, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Bodie Hodge and Georgia Purdom.
Oh yeah, they were in there having
Yeah.
a good time with the. I don't know. I just think it's so weird. I find it so hard to see her as having that degree and being what she does.
Well,
It
she's
still
a
boggles the
Tortugan.
mind.
I mean, yipes! It doesn't surprise me at all. And a lot of people have very great credentials in a variety of areas. This is not something new in anti-evolutionism. But what you look at is you can fairly say that at the moment they really got serious about their anti-evolutionism, their brain shut off. And it ain't ever going to, the pilot light's out, and you're never going to see it take spark again. There are no counterexamples that I know of from people that were in the anti-evolution movement in the 1930s that often had very significant scientific degrees, all the way down to the present. It's just basically an end career as an intellect. They're just basically repeating dogma.
Oh, and she brought up. Oh, that's right. Before I forget, because I didn't write it down because it just seemed so silly at the time. She brought up the law of biogenesis again.
Yes, they did.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, RJ, that's right. Speaking of that wonderful topic, their guy, Dr. Charles Jackson, could not distinguish spontaneous generation from abiogenesis.
Right.
In fact, he claimed to have proudly approached some guy and said, and told him like to his face repeatedly, "You believe in spontaneous generation."
Mm-hmm.
Repeatedly, and the guy's like, "No, I don't," and he's like, "Yes, you do." Got him now.
In fact, yeah, if anyone lobs that one at me, and you can find the information on it, I'll put the little thing up. Just go to tip 1.2 at my website. Because or wait a minute, no, actually it's in tip 1.7, I'm sorry. It's a little interjection about Behe, but it's about Louis Pasteur and what he had to say about
they
this
brought him up.
1860s. He warned creationists of the time, don't put your peg on this hook. Because what if the evolutionists figure it out, come up with life generated naturally? What, are you going to have to suddenly become an atheist? He was really telling him to be careful of this argument, but a lot of people don't read their Pasteur very closely on this.
Or at all.
Or at all.
Yeah, I mean, they only flashed his name as another PhD'd guy. They said, "Hey, look at us. We got all these good old popular PhD guys you've heard of before. That means we're popular. People like us." I mean, and they did work too. Because we're so shocked.
Purdom has had a small smattering of publications in regular scientific material. The same is true for Ann Gager and Douglas
Lumsden.
Axe over in Design Land and all that, and Jeffrey Tompkins. He pops up in some stuff.
Stephen Minnick.
Yannick actually is a rather fascinating case, as you're probably aware from my book, where I pointed out that Minnick doesn't even bother citing Minnick in his anti-evolution material, that his work is that irrelevant to the point at issue. And Steve Meyer and that didn't even bother citing Minnick. I'm going, poor little Scott, you know.
Yeah, they Richard Lumsden, who's in that video that passes around every so often, he was like a parasitologist. He's the guy who was supposedly teaching evolution in class, and then in like the 80s or something, based on the clothes the students were wearing. And then one of the students came up afterwards and said, and just started asking him questions, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know anything about the subject," which, I mean, to be fair, is correct. But
yeah. Actually, that was ironically true. Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, he has like a whole bunch of research done in parasitology. He was very respected in parasitology.
And people that were perfectly competent within niches. Mark Tolman, who's a microbiologist, still publishes in that. He's apparently a creationist. Just what brand, it's kind of hard to tell. It's in that section in 1.7 where I was talking about Pasteur and all that, because he was writing about the biogenesis issue, and that was his one little foray into it. But it's why it's important to try to find out what people actually think about specific data streams, to find out what their viewpoints are on there. But yeah, there's a few hundred people that kind of fall into the ballpark of actual biological expertise that are anti-evolutionists that are published in the literature. But they're none of them wildly significant, and they're not cutting edge. And I always bother about ones that are like professors emeritus, that you have to think back when they were active scientists and realize that they're drawing on the material that was earlier even than them. So you might realize that they're really kind of riffing off stuff from the 1950s in some cases, and then turn over and you look at who is actually doing the cutting edge work, and you realize, nah, these people aren't really playing on that field anymore.
Oh, but back to the abiogenesis issue. So yeah, they of course had to bring up the obligatory law of biogenesis. Then they even tossed in, interestingly, some thermodynamics in there, which they never applied to themselves. But hey, whatever. And so they were saying, oh, everything is or abiogenesis necessitates that the universe is running up instead of running down, which actually isn't the case at all. In fact, it's pretty useful to apply thermodynamics to the study of evolution.
Yep,
actually,
which they do.
I actually just got they have directionality theory, which is using like an analogous process to thermodynamics to describe evolution.
All you need for evolution, independent of how it occurred, is that an organism pass on inheritable variation and that it replicate.
Yeah.
That's all you need. The moment you got that, you can't avoid a Darwinian process. It's going to do it.
I actually I started reading, because now I finished your book, RJ. I just started reading The Vital Question by Nick Lane. Which
I've heard of that. I haven't been able to get that one yet. He's another one that's operating at that current theoretical level. It'll be amusing if I can live long enough, or you may live long enough, to where they actually figure out the origin of life rigorously, so that it's now a settled issue, to see what will happen in that case with all of the anti-evolutionists. First of all, you'll hear an incredible as the goalposts get moved, and they'll have to figure out how they're going to be dealing with that. Some of the intelligent designers and young Earth creationists and old Earth creationists they'll reconfigure completely, as they'll have to deal with it or not, saying, well, God was so clever in designing systems to generate completely artificially. Yeah, that shows you how clever God was.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They will never, ever, ever concede, ever. Never, ever, never, ever. Even if we show them absolutely everything they ask for, even if it's totally, completely contradictory, they will still never concede.
What are the
and
odds?
then just pictures of pterodactyls and dinosaurs and crap. They really didn't go into much, and then kind of skipped off to.
What'd you say, Sai?
I was gonna say when you mentioned that they're never going to admit, I said, "What are the odds?" And that reminded me, they trotted out odds again. They trotted
Oh,
out
they
odds,
did
odds for the
Impossible,
first
which they
cell.
yeah.
Because what happened, you see, RJ, you may be unaware of this because I've read your stuff and you don't make any mention of it whatsoever. But apparently, there was nothing, and then there was a cell. So they once again trotted out the odds of all the things to make a cell coming together all at once, and
all in one great big train wreck, and it's like 10 to a gazillion zeros. It's just so big your brain farts, so it can't possibly occur.
absolutely, and then it was of course, no origin, no evolution. Since we don't have a biogenesis pinned down to this is exactly how it happened, anything observable about the theory of evolution must be ignored.
I mean,
Because
yeah.
origins are bust.
Well, even though we have
Exactly.
some really good biochemical work, you can actually follow the Jack Zostak Lab's work, which they continually
Oh, yeah.
update. You can see different papers that they're putting out dealing with abiogenesis. They do lots of really high level chemistry, biochemistry stuff, which the
Yeah, and what's
creationists are
really
not getting
funny
anywhere near. So
on that matter of parasitism and how they were copying plate tectonics, the same thing goes for their odds about and problems with abiogenesis, because all of the material and all the bring up about how life could originate are the ones that evolutionists bring up, because they don't want just any old answer. They actually want to work out what actually happened. So they're the ones that are constantly critiquing and saying, no, we can't account for this yet, and this is why we have to reinvestigate this. We have to work out a lot of the difficulty for years and years was trying to figure out how the nucleotides form. The ones that make up RNA and DNA, and uracil in particular was a real trouble spot until more recently, when they figured out how these things can originate, and it takes years and years and years of effort to it. Meanwhile, the anti-evolutionists over in the Kibitzer corner, none of them are doing any of the work. They'll never do any of the work. They'll just simply cherry pick what they want until such point that they've actually figured it all out. But it doesn't make the reptile-mammal transition go away.
No, it does not. And for the research Jackson was referring to there, it sounds like we're actually the scientific community is actually working hard to make one of Ken Ham's constant assertions, the things he says all the time, true, which is, if assuming we do make these discoveries, and he had to say it because it's his thing, molecules to man evolution.
mm-hmm.
You know, that popular theory of molecules to man evolution that we usually just shorten to ignore that.
Or from mud.
Indeed. Or
Good
did you come from a
to
rock?
you.
Did you come from a rock? That's another one. But
No, I didn't come from Iraq. That's out in the Middle East. I come from Spokane.
Indeed.
It doesn't make good common sense. Just none of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the origins or bust thing, you can shake your head at it, but don't be surprised. All anti-evolutionists at some point jump to origins or bust. That was the case back in the 19th century. French anti-evolutionists were running off of that at the same time Darwin is alive. They were. That's why the whole biogenesis issue was such a big to-do, is that they argued that if you somehow or other could not resolve the origin of life, then you didn't have to worry about anything else.
Oh, crypto.
And the German evolutionists, Haeckel and the crowd in there were basically following the same logic, that they felt we got to figure out how life originated. And Darwin and Wallace said, no, you don't. We only need to know what happened now and work our way backwards, and then you can worry about the origins later. Even if it was a miracle, it doesn't matter, because we can see the evolution data independent of that.
Crypto brings up a good point that we forgot it wasn't in the movie, but one of Ken Ham's favorites
The
is
life coming from a peanut butter jar.
Yes, because Ken Ham says there's everything you need for life in there, but I screw the cap on and I leave it for a month, no life. Hey,
Well, Chuck Misler tossed that one off too. It's one of the little side tropes that you have to remember, that whole slew of heavy guns from higher level creationism. Eric Hovind comes from the basement land of the grassroots creationists. Well, I mean this quite literally. It's not even a pejorative. It just is. These are people who do not do any original work themselves. All they do is simply copy off the material of the ones they want to think of as the core fact claimants. And a big chunk of the people that they were relying on in this movie are ones that are fact claimants in the creationism world. They're the ones that are making assertions about actual science data, where if you track down their printed works, Minton and all the rest, they're actually making claims. They're cockamamie wrong, but nevertheless, they are actually trying to do that. Kent and Eric and that bunch, Ken Ham, Ray Comfort, none of those are fact claimants. They're all secondary redactors that are just the listeners, that nod their heads and go, yes, that's true. And so once you understand that pecking order, that you can home in on the ones that are actually the fact claimants and focus in on them rather than worrying so much about the talking heads.
Indeed. You know, they spent an awful lot of time throwing dinosaurs on the screen. I guess they were trying
they
to.
did.
I guess they
They
were
want
trying to
those
catch the
little
youth.
kids.
Yes, because kids like dinosaurs. They're right about that, and
Too,
that's-
yeah.
Get them.
Oh,
This has been
the Tyrannosaur eating melons.
Yes, he needed those. He needed those ripping teeth.
Did they actually mention that in the
Oh,
story?
they didn't
They
just
showed
mention it. They showed it.
They showed it. Tyrannosaur.
Oh wow, yeah, those melon eating. That would be, I think, Ken Ham. He was the one that used that. Dwayne Gish, I think, referred to them as eating bark.
Yeah, well, you see,
But
he
Ken
needs
Ham
the
was
teeth.
the melon guy.
Yes.
And so, yeah, just what you need are giant shock absorber skulls with 6-inch serrated steak knives that are designed for eating melons.
For piercing the tough outer shell of a watermelon.
Incredibly thick husks
Well, come
of
on,
the
those
melons.
things are those melons are
This
dangerous.
makes so much sense.
Melons are very dangerous.
Yeah, you don't ever want to turn your back on a melon, man. They'll go for you like in a
All right,
moment. Oh,
everybody,
Paul has just joined.
Special guest star Paul has
Well,
arrived.
hello.
Hiya, Paul.
I have
How are
arrived, but I've not seen the movie.
Congratulations.
Oh,
Well,
that's
you've seen
right.
chunks
It's not in
of it.
Canada.
I have seen more than I would like.
Oh, Paul, what you did?
A great compliment, Paul. The two postings you've done so far are both ones that I've stuck in my reference bibliography because they're excellent critical takedowns of the material that was in front of you.
Oh
Bravo.
yeah, it was
Kudos.
wonderful for watching the movie and just remembering the anthropology stuff while they were talking about it because it was just hilarious.
Burst into laughter over Charles Jackson the moment he would come up because of what you had done in your video about him.
Indeed. But actually, Paul, I'm kind of glad you didn't see it because, I mean, the rest of us were sort of worried it would damage that intellect.
He's gone.
He's had enough of this movie. He just can't take it anymore. Hopefully he'll be back. Hopefully he'll be back.
He had a connection stream.
Could be.
Oh,
there he is.
There he is, back.
Did you the what Dr. Jackson said about the day age thing? He said the Hebrew could only be interpreted as day.
Yes. Indeed. And
yeah.
And it's I did not find his argument extremely convincing.
Mainly because he doesn't
all you have to do is only cite Bible apologists that agree with you, and then it becomes simple.
Indeed, and still with the dinosaurs, it was great. Great for the kids, and they pulled out the behemoth with the. Remember, I mentioned the death of numerous shoehorns in the making of this film. The behemoth was pulled out. Oh, I'm sorry if anyone doesn't know the word. We commonly call it hippo. Is that? And let's see, the age of the dinosaurs. That's just an assertion. That was dismissed. Age of when dinosaurs existed. That is just an assertion. That's it. I even put little quotes.
Yeah,
in my
Paul
notebook.
picked my brain and a bunch of other people's brains to try to figure out what the hell that sauropod was they used in the story, and none of us could figure it all out because it was just too vague.
Which was very weird in the movie because they had those guys who may or may not have been sauropod morphs, and then they added in
actual sauropods.
Then they added in Brachiosaurus and in what I think might have been an Argentinosaurus. So they had the archetypal sauropod morphs and then highly derived sauropods.
And I know from my dinosaur books, you've got a whole bunch of families of very small pre-prosauropods. The melanosaurids and a lot of these other ones that grade all the way down to like dog size before you even get to plateosaurids and that. And so there's just so many groupings that fall in there. that if they actually lined all of those up in the movies, they would be showing the very thing that they don't want, which is the transitional forms.
Well, they glossed over a lot of things that would be inconvenient, like when they were let's see. The geologic column apparently does not mean what we think it means. Everything, as you know,
Corinthian column.
That's just the the geologic column. That only shows the order of how things were buried by the Great Flood, and then immediately jumped to another topic, so they didn't have to get into that nebulous conversation about.
Oh yeah. They mentioned, of course, the obligatory fish or sea creatures on mountains, which they never actually think to do any reading about, because if you do, things start getting very weird very quickly.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, the sea critters we find on mountains like the Himalayas, they are not open sea creatures. They are dark depths of the ocean creatures. They're benthic animals. They're not pelagic. And so it's very weird to find these guys like crinoids and whatnot on tops of these mountains. So either they were under extreme depth during the flood, or...
Well, not only that, not only the fish. Here's another teensy tiny little problem. If you look at any of these oddball things where fish and stuff are found up in high mountain ranges, and you start looking at the other rock formations, you discover that they have crystals in them that can only be formed over long periods of time and at great depths and pressures. You have metamorphic rocks that are just, we know from direct experiment. And I'll tell you that literally no creationist ever discusses any of those.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because I did notice what you just said was strangely absent from the movie. That's correct.
Yes, I am so shocked that they would not talk about things that none of their side ever talks about.
No, it's just, it's a sea creature is a sea creature is a sea creature.
Absolutely.
It's a fish.
Did it ever get wet?
It's a fish. Right? They're never going to discuss the different zones of the ocean with regard to this. They're never going to tell you about they're never going to distinguish, like if we find a strata that contains all of these aquatic creatures, was it saltwater? Was it freshwater? Oh, who cares? It was fish.
What was?
I just got a remark.
Oh, go ahead.
Phenos in rare form. Somebody, Richard had misspelled Norse's nose mythology, and Pheno says Lord Voldemort hates nose mythology.
Apparently, we missed something from Convenient.
I gotta give you kudos to that one, Pheno.
Apparently, we missed a good question from Convenient, and I'm trying to find it. Scrolling on. Does anyone see it?
From who?
Convenient.
What was the most WTF movie or moment in the movie?
Oh, that's okay. There you go.
That's a good one.
What do you think? Because I have a definite one.
All right, go ahead. What do you got?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. The craziest moment I ever had in the movie was when the microbiologist guy simply dismissed all all of the genetic similarities among organisms. Because in the movie, they have kind of a difficult time trying to tell you if it's okay to accept the really high number of genetic similarities between us and chimps. One guy says, no, it's not that high of a number. And the microbiologist guy said, yeah, it's a high number, but so what? It doesn't really mean anything.
They're simultaneously arguing.
Whoa.
All right, that was
similarities, and besides, they're all from common design.
Yeah, that's the thing. And my moment was not a spectacular one, and we already covered it. And it was the equating the stretching out of the heavens to the redshift and all that. That was it. That was actually I did the face palming thing in the theater at that point, just because of the level of shoehornery that was actually going on.
The parasitism of it and how things get incorporated. Often, the fun part is to follow how slow it takes them to incorporate data and what data they want to incorporate. If you look at Kurt Wise, who I noticed is not involved in this little show, he might have been one to call on stream to argue that there were massive islands of floating vegetation the size of states that had masses of entire ecosystems on them after the flood, and they just floated around and landed as one gigantic excursion packet, like in Australia. And he's never really been able to get too detailed about that. I can offer some hypotheses why he's never been able to get detailed on that.
Hey, that's not nearly as cool as the kangaroos that were flying by volcano eruption.
Yes, ballistic kangaroos.
Well, all right.
Too bad they didn't mention that one. I think that would have gotten quite a stir from the audience.
The reason why of course these videos, they're going to look cute and graphic, and they're going to look nice just like a Nova show is going to look nice. But what I recommend everybody do is you can look up the various people that they're having as talking heads, and you can find their actual print arguments that are presented in Answers in Genesis and the ICR and all the rest. And of course, Paul knows all about this stuff because he's tracked material down in that as well. And at that point, it really gets funny, because what can pass muster at the level of acute visual graphics starts disintegrating at the source data level, which you'll only be able to find out about if you can get their written material that's got the footnotes or not.
And Richard, I don't know. Richard he's curious how much the film made first night. I would be curious
Too
to know that
much
as well, and I would do it really, but I do not know, and I will endeavor to find out. And
judging from their weird creative accounting, they'll probably find a way of making money out of it.
I'm telling you, the spookiest thing was that the theater I went to was it looked like about a third of the seats had no humans in them, and yet online when I bought the tickets, everything was sold except for one seat, and it does seem a little spooky there. But hey, were we talking
Dino's
about?
Got a good question.
What's
Jackson, did they have feathered theropods in the movie?
Absolutely not.
I am so shocked and disappointed.
The only theropod who made nope, I was wrong. They had velociraptors who appeared, like a pack of them. Okay. And a Tyrannosaurus, but they were all very reptile-y.
No one had. So they were your Jurassic Park 1 model.
Yes.
Right. It was surprisingly featherless. And was it before we started? We were talking about their repetitive mentioning of carbon dating, or was that after we started?
That was before.
Yeah, that was before. Give a reprise on that, because I think the audience will be interested in that the carbon repetition issue.
That should be brought up. They actually state in the movie that we get all these ideas of millions of years from carbon dating. Because carbon dating doesn't work. Because carbon dating, the half-life is just not long enough, and it doesn't work for this, doesn't work for that, and doesn't work for the other thing. And then they quickly mentioned there are other kinds, but they're mainly based on assertions, and then moved on to the next topic. But the focus on carbon, and see, that's sort of sneaky, because they'll say something. I told you, it's a good way to sneak something past someone. Say a bunch of things that are true, and then slip in your nonsense at the end. People will be used to the pattern of you saying things that are true and just accept your final assertion. And
well,
that's
remember
what this one was. That's exactly
how
what
charitable I am on this. And I made the argument that it was much more likely that they use carbon dating because it's easier to say. That if they want to talk about rubidium strontium all the time, it's way more clumsy, and radiometric is not so common a word. And I find on Twitter that you find creationists popping up, and they just use carbon dating for all radiometric dating.
Oh yeah. I mean, they can't.
And of course, the idiots at the creationists don't really do a heck of a lot to clarify it for them.
Oh, I forgot the best point about these dating methods. The best point that they did actually say one thing to dismiss the other dating methods.
Yeah,
decay rates are variable. Decay rates they're variable. They could change. They could have been everything decays in a day. Could have been a million years. We don't know.
That's right. And they also mentioned how you must absolutely know the exact amount of parent-daughter ratio. Never mind analyses where we don't actually have to know that, like was oxygen isotope analysis or thermoluminescence or electron spin resonance or things like that.
Yeah.
But
James
we don't know
Hayden
about those. Who cares about those?
Side chat asks where Rodan and Gojira fit into this nonsense. That is what I would like to know.
No appearance was made. I thought I saw Mothra. I thought I saw Mothra way in the background.
A Mothra.
But
I like
wait,
Gadira,
Paul was
or
saying
whatever it
something.
is, that rocket propelled turtle. I want to see in the their creationist models.
RJ, I
Did
think
you guys
Paul was
talk-
saying something.
Did you guys talk at all about what the pre-show and post-show were?
Not yet.
I'm super curious as to what even went on in that shenanigans.
Yeah, we'll be getting to that fun. But here's one that let's see, who's going to disappear when I bring this one up. Probably not Jackson because he sat through it, but RJ and Paul may just bolt. Yeah, Dr. Mary Schweitzer's work was once again just mutilated. Apparently, they found complete happy cells.
Yep.
Not just in soft tissue. There were
Fresh
cells,
blood.
fresh and something about blood vessels or capillaries or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But actually, not the markings of, not the remains of. No. Cells, actual cells, were just hopping around in there. So
and they're all over the place.
Look at that.
They're just everywhere.
I was
I
was fairly.
Oh, and
sure.
no mention that they're identical to ostrich cells. No mention of that.
Yeah,
they happily
Oh,
forgot
that'd be
that one.
fiddly bit details.
The binding ostrich.
Paul did a very good interview with Schweitzer, and you might want to jump in on that, Paul, because that's your baby. That was an excellent one.
Yeah, I'm just excited that I'm going to be able to use that interview again. For the fourth freaking time. Because the creationist,
I've used it on Twitter.
They don't even change what they're saying, so I can keep using the same interview, and it sounds like she's very poignantly addressing exactly what they're saying because they don't have anything new. Oh my goodness!
Because they just repeat the same claims over and over again. I constantly point out, or when I bump into creationists to try to use this argument, especially if they're grassroots ones, which means they're way below the radar on the technical details, I try to get them to explain how big they think the samples were. That slows them down in a hurry.
So was that during the main body of the film that they did that, or was that in the pre-post?
That was
in the main body.
That was right in there, and
they quickly brought her up, mentioned the research, and sped onward.
Well, no, they let her nod and smile once before they moved on. That's
so. Sorry, I jumped in.
So they actually had.
They also, she is the hero among scientists who has been hounded for her work or what have you.
Oh, they said that again too. That she's like been drummed out of.
Yeah, there's the whole persecution because they don't like what the implications of her research and whatnot.
So they haven't heard the interview where Mary says the only time I've ever been persecuted is by young Earth creationists.
I believe that one might have accidentally. They might have missed that one.
They might have missed that. Okay.
That may have ended up on the editing.
Yeah, well, you don't want to use Mary Schweitzer by actually interviewing Mary Schweitzer, because Mary Schweitzer won't be telling them what they want to be true.
Yeah,
indeed. And sometime near that, I didn't. Oh, this is what I've actually wrote. There was she also claimed that claimed that natural selection isn't evolution, and this is what I wrote. I wrote, claim natural selection isn't evolution. No shit. That's what I wrote at the bottom.
Wait, was that Georgia who said that?
Yeah.
How could I guess?
Yeah, it isn't as though that Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection isn't natural selection, because that would be like what the guy actually said.
Yeah, and this was a follow-up to the Peppered Moth thing. And yes, true. See, again, say things that are true.
Ooh, what did they say about the Peppered Moth?
Well,
what did they say about that?
They didn't dismiss it like Wells did.
They're all good with that, and they said that is natural selection. Yeah. But natural selection is not evolution.
And you know why? Because Mr. Majerus, before his death, replicated the Kettlewell study independently using correct methods. So they can't claim, as Wells did, for it. In fact, the current work is that, yep, Peppered Moth examples now confirmed again, and it can go back in the school books.
Oh, yeah, it's like the largest population genetic study ever done or something like that.
Yeah, he died tragically. He was quite young. He was only in his 50s, but he was also pissed off at creationists misusing his work.
Yeah, it was huge, but yeah, they just kind of brought that up as hey, this is dogs to dogs, flies to flies, whatever.
He's
but,
just a moth.
Yeah,
still a moth.
I mean, because hey, if we can't show that speciation occurs, then it's two different kinds. But if we can, well, it's the same. It's still the same kind.
Yeah,
so
and Ham
heads I
said
win,
that.
tails you lose.
Tails we lose.
Exactly.
Ken Ham did throw it in there that that with his whole repetition of kinds over and over again, he mentioned that there can be variation, and that's different varieties and speciation. He said it quickly, but he said and speciation. So speciation is now it fits in perfectly with the whole kinds argument, apparently.
Well, they even said Homo erectus is a variation of human, didn't they?
In one of the baraminology
Neanderthal.
things, Wood, in one of his pieces, you have to remember how they do baraminology analysis. They don't actually do the data based on their own study.
No. They said they are not on board with Australopithecus sediba being in the human holobaramin. They are totally against Australopithecines being related to us. They're just chimps.
Right.
Well, they're going to have to arm wrestle Wood then.
Yeah. However, Neanderthal, fully human, absolutely. Which is
Neanderthal man. Even though there are men, women, and children, Neanderthal man.
Ironically, this was something that should have been really obvious, and it was brought up really at the time when there were a few scientists who were thinking that maybe Homo neanderthalensis was actually just a subspecies of humans. And the things that anybody that's ever tried to do a film where they want to have a human being masquerading as a Neanderthal, so they have to make him up to look like a Neanderthal. The people who were actually doing the detail work were noticing the fact that the physical skull of a Neanderthal doesn't match the human. There's no way that you can put bigger brow ridges and stuff, and so you look kind of Neanderthal-y, but our overall head structure just doesn't fit. And so they really have special effects people in movies who had a devil of a time trying to pull this thing off, and it never looks quite convincing. Precisely because our head structures are that divergent because we're not the same species.
Oh, Paul, that was something that also reminded me of your work. It was Menton showcasing Australopithecus, a chimpanzee, and a human, and they were kind of using animation to scale up and down the sizes so they would fit into each other.
Yeah, the superimposing of the skulls. That's the part you're referring to.
Of course, they were only looking at the skulls, but I mean, even by their own skull casts, it's very easy to see that Australopithecus is not a chimp. From the skull alone, its cheekbones are too flat, for one thing.
Foramen magnum placement is different.
Exactly.
The dental structure is very, very distinctive. All of that. But remember, Menton
who cares about any of that, right?
Decades of experience at flushing data down the field. If you look at his other works, this is a guy who has that down to a science.
So does that mean the movie was doing 3D animation while the talking heads were talking?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So you didn't get to see this fabulous it's all right. It was crap. Yes, it was not just a big panel discussion. There was a whole lot of nice effects, and you missed the part we covered earlier where Adam was created by a tornado.
We love that.
Yeah, I've actually seen that preview clip.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. Like a tornado in a junkyard, isn't it?
It knits the bone together, kind of Westworld style.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah,
and
that was something. Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. Tornado creating us. Oh well.
Yeah.
It's like this new video. Eric Hovind is doing new glossy videos that are like his dad's stuff, except with less information in them.
Which is impressive in and of itself.
Yeah.
That takes skill. That does take skill, and of course, Ham trotted out that there's no mechanism for new information to be added to the DNA strand, except for
without ever saying what new information is. They always skip that part.
Yeah, they always link it to a computer program or something of that sort. That it's a language, it's a code, no, and
it was like the way they make it. Everything's just supposed to be going downward. Which is why the cat, the archetypal cat, had like some of everything. It had the lion mane, the tiger stripes, the leopard prints on its posterior.
I noticed that was a little odd, but that is not in the notebook. I did not write that down. It did strike me as odd, but I just kind of dismissed it and moved on. But it's good that you brought that up because that is accurate.
Yeah, it's actually quite a technical literature. It's related to some extent from Turing systems, named for Alan Turing, about how stripes and differentiation of that kind into pelts and that occur by natural mutation means and by stochastic elements and all that. And of course, needless to say, I doubt that they will have bothered to look at any of that stuff.
Indeed. And who was it? I think it was Jeremy Lyon, that correct me if I'm wrong, or if it's really not that important. Said during his little highly motivating segment, don't give me theories, give me facts. Completely missing the point that facts.
Oh, they did the same thing. They talked about Eugenie Scott.
Yes, but you need facts are an ingredient while you're cooking up your theory. The theory is at the top of the pyramid.
And you got to pay attention to all of those little facty things. And I know by direct measurement, they don't do that.
Indeed. So
I mean, they quoted Eugenie Scott in that same kind of way, saying facts are a dime a dozen. Give me a theory, but then
that's it. That's the part.
Yeah, and then at the same time, it was these are just guesses. All these theories are making are just guesses. It's okay. Which is it? Is it just a guess? What is the deal here?
Okay.
Yeah, I get that quite a lot in the Twitter feeds that I joust with, and I point out, how dare you make such a claim? No, they aren't guesses. Have you ever read any of their work to see how not guess-like they are? That comes up a lot when the ones who complain, as Jonathan Wells does, about reconstructions of animals, where they'll show what Australopithecines look like. In fact, it's really meticulous science work.
Oh, yeah.
And the irony is that every single one of the critters that they're showing in their stupid movie, where do they think they have an idea of what these animals look like? They're cribbing off of the regular science work.
I actually I have a friend who I know at least last year she was getting her major in forensic anthropology, which is responsible for part of that, and so yeah, that is very, very detailed work. And then they did it the Ark Encounter too, didn't they? They got the what was it? You mentioned it in your book, RJ. It was one of the therapsids that they took? Was it Lystrosaurus or something like that? That they used
yeah, they did actually show in there, and all of the material is stuff they've cribbed from the regular scientists. How do they know what the hell this damn thing looked like? It wasn't from any of their scientists, air quotes.
Yeah, they actually had to use an argument. They had to use Big Bang cosmology at one point to make an argument for one of their points. I think it was about the distant starlight problem, and they used something regarding the Big Bang cosmology that helped make their argument work, which I thought was kind of odd because they just foiled it, hadn't they?
That was that was back to the stretching thing again.
Oh
yeah, that was the stretching.
Well, they have an observable universe they have to accommodate. They have to have the distribution of stuff in all of that. They have to figure out why there are the particular isotope ratios, why there are heavy elements, and all of that. Ultimately, the lure, you don't see it in a lot of them, but there are some fence straddler, young Earth but old universe creationists. It's an odd breed. Hank Hanegraaff, Hank Hanegraaff falls into that category, and the reason is because almost all of that fine-tuning of the universe shit that you find in anthropic arguments, that's all built on the Big Bang and standard cosmology. So if you want to show off all of these cute little fine-tunings, whole physics package as a group, and a lot of these ones may not know that they can't quite cherry pick on that.
That's right. Faulkner actually brought up, he said he read a book on the anthropic principle, or he said, which kind of reminded me of The Blind Watchmaker, the way he described it. He says, it explains how the whole universe looks like it's, designed, but it's not. And he said, oh, they just look at the evidence and then dismiss it. I guarantee, without having read that book, that they explain why it looks the way it does.
Oh, and some Steven Weinberg, the physicist, has been rather grumpy, pointing out to them that some of the fine-tuning things aren't that fine-tuned. That's part of the problem. They got sometimes orders of magnitude variation range on them.
I mean, look at the Blind Watchmaker. The whole point of that book is Dawkins says, okay, you know, this stuff looks really cool, like bat echolocation, for instance. But actually, if we really look at it, it's not really as perfect as it outwardly seems. There are lots of ways it could be better, and you know, it's certainly very good. But there are ways it could be better. It could be better designed if made by engineers, rather than natural selection.
Hey, now, God said it was very good. It's very good.
It's very good.
It was
nipples on
I love the
men.
way they did
very
that. They
good.
were like, it was very
parasitical
good.
nematodes. Very good.
Yes.
They always paused, and it was good. It was very good.
I'll tell you.
Well, remember they picked this guy as a narrator who had a voice that could
That's
melt
what was
butter.
very good. You're right.
This very resonant voice. I mean, who isn't going to believe that, especially if they don't check any of the arguments?
You're right. That narrator was very good at his job. That I will accept. Now, here's evidence that at this point in the movie, I was sort of just psychologically bludgeoned because the next thing that I had written after the part about misrepresenting theories again, or misunderstanding of theories again, give me facts, not theories. The next thing I actually wrote, same page, is cute crab though. Jack, you remember when right after that section, a little crab?
Oh yes,
a little crab scuttles out from behind a rock, like to say
yes.
howdy. I swear he waved.
I do remember that.
So
yeah,
this is what I wrote down. Cute crab though. So
yeah, that's right. I remember when the little crab. I also remember the plesiosaur that came out and was swimming around, just looking cool, I guess, to bring in those.
Well, they had to have a Loch Ness monster in there after all. On crabs, actually, that's an ironic one to bring up because one of the examples that Stephen Jay Gould loved to point out about creepy nature, and even Michael Denton was aware of it in one of his books, but there's a particular parasite castrates its crab host and turns it into an eating machine to feed the parasite. So maybe we don't want to bring up all the crab stuff here because it's kind of creepy.
Oh, yes, indeed. And one of my favorite parts, because Ray Comfort was in this one.
Yes, he was.
He is in this one. And one of the interesting things when they were talking about, you know, God making everything and everything is very good, and there was plants and there was seeds, and every plants were made with seeds so that they could procreate and blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're showing the pictures of the different food items that were available. You know, because the Tyrannosaurus had to stalk that dangerous melon and all that, and then in the CGI that we if we were flat earthers we could dismiss because it's CGI, they pan to the left, and guess what's growing on a tree? A big bunch of bananas. Which,
oh, you're kidding?
No, bananas.
So, that's right. They do. They have
fully
I
formed.
didn't even think about that. Bananas.
Fully formed. Go to ShopRite and buy them. Bananas, just like we eat them today.
Chiquito had a very early lock on Eden.
Yeah, so it seems the whole humans producing bananas from that nasty, seedy little useless item. Apparently, that's all just fiction. Bananas, day one, bam, there you go.
Oh my goodness! That I wish I had noticed that. Oh my gosh, that's so funny because when we were all looking over, what was it? We were looking over the trailer last week, I think, and the prosauropod guy was eating grass, and I remember RJ said, "Whoa, wait a minute!"
I know. I think I didn't I call that to your attention, Paul?
You did, and I decided not to include it in the video because I was already nitpicking that part about enough. But yeah, they're walking through grass. They're clearly they ignore the research that sauropods didn't swim around in water or walk around in water. Like they
physically couldn't eat grass, even if they had been a bloody field of it. They had no ability to do that.
Anyway, yes.
Hey, who needs facts?
You would think having Ray Comfort be involved with this, he'd be especially cautious about any bringing up of bananas.
Guys, be careful about those bananas.
Oh, background research, not their trick.
And there they were, fully formed, go to Food Town bananas.
All they needed to have, maybe if you look really close, if it's high definition, you could find whether or not they got a Chiquita sticker on it.
Okay, Savannah says she caught that.
Yeah.
Okay.
She just didn't tell me about it.
I didn't think it was important. They got everything else wrong too. So.
Yes, amid the background noise.
That actually is a fun thing to do. Because a lot of films, when they're trying to do recreations like BBC documentaries on dinosaurs, they have to be very careful about stuff. In fact, one of the things that they did is when they had a particular dinosaur or reptile ancestor where they were having it urinating, and they got a lot of grief from the paleontologist who pointed out there was no indication that they should have been able to do that.
Oh, so, I know you're talking
about.
You're talking about the BBC Walking with Dinosaurs. Yeah, I love those videos. They're great. But yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so when you've got a creationist coming along, they're looking for the visual appearance. But yet they don't necessarily realize that animals existed in an ecological context, and they have a massive baggage along with them, and they've never read any of the technical literature. So they're just going for the look and not realizing all the stuff that goes along with it.
I don't think they pestered too many paleobiologists or paleobotanists on this one.
No, I think not. But
or plant biologists who could tell them about the history of angiosperms and monocots.
Guys, I will be back shortly.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, back shortly.
Yeah, James Hayton asked, they didn't have fossilized yellow snow,
no.
Although we do have dinosaur poop. There's a whole field, coprolites, about fossilized dung. That's actually some of the most important areas. Within my lifetime, that whole discipline has emerged as a cutting edge one. It's one that always gets snickers because it's kind of creepy weird. But when you look at what an animal eats, what it poops out, it's telling you a whole slew of things, not only about its diet, but about the diet of the things it eats. So that you have the animal distribution, what kind of plants are available, what sort of pollen elements are available. And it's just a fascinating little window because it's literally preserving the actions of a single animal in a way that you wouldn't otherwise know because you won't have material on soft parts like organs and other stuff. So these sort of things can be preserved even in a non-logger state in the setting. So yeah, yay for coprolites.
Indeed. And let's see, I think it was and about that point in the movie, they went into their missing link nonsense again. That, first of all, Lucy isn't one, completely ignoring the fact that give us a missing link, so you give them one. And if you give them one, they need 3. And then if you produce 3, they need 5. And unless you have every parent and every child from the dawn of time till yesterday, they're not going to accept it. And that was
it's been referred to as Gish's rule, as an insult. As paleontology improves, we have ever more fossils, so the number of gaps increases because we have way more of the things in between.
Indeed, and that was the point where they the phrase "Lucy isn't close to being human." That's another time I wrote "no shit" at the bottom of that page. Like, quite a few months. No, I'd say quite a few years. All right, let's say quite a distance.
Yeah.
Quite a distance from.
Yeah, we invited her over for Thanksgiving once, and she was not very good at table manners. So we keep them kind of distantly removed in the family. But what can you say? Not all the relatives are one you want to have over.
So is that the section that I pre-bunked? Is that the same? The Lucy section.
Yeah, but they went back to Lucy a couple of times.
Oh, okay, all right.
And let's see, and with the skull.
It sounds like essentially they were really obsessed with human evolution, which doesn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, and back to we were talking about the skulls thing earlier, where they were superimposing the one skull on another to show similarities and differences, and that's where they came up with. Lucy had nothing to do with any of us because the skull's not exactly the same, and therefore, if they don't look exactly the same, they can't possibly be related in any way, even though they have a striking number of similar features. And they mentioned that Neanderthals, they're fully human. They just and the thing about them is they had by the cranial capacity they said they had bigger brains.
Yeah, that's the standard trope. They're just
Yeah.
repeating stuff that you could have read in creationism literature in 1975. It's that dated. Problem is, and we have DNA from the damn Neanderthals, and we have a massive number of skeletons, and then we have the Denisovans that are sort of human hybrids with that. And so it's just, we're way past the stuff that they're gleaning from old creationist books that were around when there were VCRs.
Indeed, and bigger brain, I don't know why they would focus. You know what? I do know. For their audience, bigger brain means smarter.
Yeah, in fact,
bigger brain
yeah,
does
there's
not
a
mean
whole bunch
smarter
of stuff
all the
about
time.
which parts of the brain are larger on them and what kind of cranial capacity, how that relates to particular skill sets and all that, but that's more that technical literature that not one of the people on that show will have ever bothered to read.
Indeed. All right, let me flip some page. Okay, that we talked about that earlier. What do we got?
How many pages of notes did you take?
I filled. Now remember, a lot of times it was a single point on a page, but I filled up because I was writing in the dark.
A giant frowny face and what?
Right, it was an entire 3x5, little notebooks with a little spirally thing at the top. One of those, but because I was writing in the dark and I couldn't see what I was writing, just to make sure it would be legible afterwards, it was write whatever the hell I had to write down, and then flip the page so I didn't end up writing over it the next time. So
yeah,
yes,
yeah, there we go.
Let's see, skull comparison.
You should eat more carrots. That gets better night vision.
I'll work on it. Okay, already covered that.
Plus, you can do a good Bugs Bunny impression that way.
Indeed, creation of man involved localized tornado. Covered that.
I love that. I really love that one.
Oh yeah, just like with the bananas, you'd think it would have occurred to them to think of the whole tornado in a junkyard argument that they make when they decided to use a tornado to make a human. Who was I mentioned earlier?
And in addition to which, it's totally non-scriptural. I mean, the Bible doesn't really say anything other than says that God takes Adam's rib and makes women that way. The other one just says they're both there. Poof. And they're done. So there's no tornado. There's no misplaced concreteness. Why not use something else, like say a glacial formation to make human beings, or a fog, or something else? I mean, why the particular example that they do it? They're being non-scriptural in that case, and in which case we can burn them at the stake for theodicy.
Well, and Ken Ham says that all the time. You can't add to God's word. I don't remember any tornadoes making humans. I may have missed that passage, but
the man who has an entire novel series now of Noah fan fiction.
Oh, I think I've seen snippets of some of that stuff. Holy,
yeah, Noah
that was
dinosaurs and stuff. It's really cool.
Sounds enchanting. All right, yeah. Adam was surprisingly European. Covered that. Oh, who the hell was percentages? Percentages can't be used to describe genetic similarities. That was in reference to the similarities between the other great apes, the other apes and us, and all that sort of thing. Percentages mean nothing. Statistics, however, for making the first cell all at once, that was fun. But
yeah, they literally contradicted themselves in the same show, where they're arguing there are no similarities, but the similarities are due to common design.
Exactly, and and percentages don't matter, even though the percentages prove common design.
Just like the percentages don't matter when you buy a lottery ticket. Everybody wins the lottery, right?
I mean, I think we've seen several times that they really don't care a whole lot about their own arguments. They have guys who come on in their movies, their big budget movies, who can't decide amongst themselves what the answer to these questions are, and then they're each touted one after the other, as authorities, and then the audience just says, "Yep, I agree with both of these guys. I'm not going to think about the fact that they just contradicted each other. It doesn't matter."
If you know the background context of what they're talking about, and realize how vague their own worldview is, especially young earth creationism, even though it theoretically is very specific about the flood. In practice, it's very vague. And what you have is that the average guy doing the show won't know any of that context, literally. So when they hear somebody say jargon, 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 the fact that somebody from the outside is going, holy cow, you've just contradicted yourself. They're not seeing that. They're not reading it that way because they don't know any context and they never connect up dots in any of that way in their own heads. So what seems to be a contradiction isn't in their brains because there's no background. This is what we think happened to compare that with.
Wait, this might be spoilers, and maybe you guys covered this, but did any of you become young Earth creationists after watching the movie?
I did not. I did not. And when I was driving, I tweeted over to Eric that just asking the question, did he think this movie was good enough to cure me of my atheism? And so, and
Jackson, apparently this was not an emotional wellspring of your conversion to creationism either.
Oh, you saw that tweet already? Yeah, no, I was not charitable with my concept of these guys. In a tweet that I put up a little while ago, right after I got home. What it said something about a bunch of con men trying to trick sheeple or something like that.
Indeed.
I would just say my Tortugan alert would be flashing on them continuously. And if you wanted to have a little streamer that would run along on the bottom of the film, information content, and it would be flatlined all the way through. And then occasional spikes downward as saying, error, fact checked wrong.
If they were even able to do such a thing.
Indeed. And this was the point in the movie where he came out with in that deep voice with the whole that God said everything was very good, not just good.
It was very good.
Double plus good.
Double plus good. It was like uber good. It was that good. Now,
I mean, it was so good it needed a pause between the words.
Absolutely.
That's how good it was.
Absolutely. And I would question that if it was so all-fired, uber, ultra, wonderful good, I mean, how did that work out? The two primary creations botched it. I mean, his very good thing screwed up.
My worry is more, or my not even worry. It's the thing that I think is funny is it took God 5 days, or I guess 4. It took God 4 days, to mess with this one little speck of mud, and then he just sneezed out the whole rest of the universe. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that thing, the rest of the universe. Let me go make that right now. Just whip it up.
Yeah, well, see, remember, he didn't have to make it as big as it is now. He made it real tiny and stretched it out.
What does that sound?
Remember, you only can see 10,000 stars with your naked eye. So their universe was a really limited one. It's like the Radio Shack universe.
Oh yeah, I think
later time when they started discovering with those pesky telescopy things that, like, holy shit, there's a lot more out there.
I'm actually surprised, although it may be a bit too high level for the intended audience, that they didn't trot out Lyle's answer to the distant starlight problem, where he basically fixes relativity so that it works in his favor.
Oh yes, they
changed it. Dated.
They changed it.
That would be like putting a thing up about the dating of the Second Coming, because if you've looked at the history of trying to explain distant starlight, it's like the Book of the Month Club there. They move from, everybody has got to put in their 2 cents worth. And there's actually a lot of criticism within the creationist community on things. So you've got these competing camps blowing their arguments to smithereens. They're actually trying to behave kind of sciencey because they do really want it to be kind of true. And it doesn't take very long before they suddenly have a speed bump where they're bumping into the fact that the reality doesn't match any of their predictions. So if they were to pin themselves on Lyle or anybody else, that can potentially date the show. And I think they wanted to be as vague, squishy as possible so that this one can kind of run forever without anybody ever seeing anything.
It's kind of funny that they would do that, because some, like, is it Is it ICR? No. Yeah, I think it's ICR. They've wedded themselves to, is it Russ Humphrey's idea of the white hole hypothesis, where like
Yeah.
Earth is the center of a gravity well?
Well, in the movie, they changed. They gave another overly simplistic, if you recall,
Yeah,
another
they
overly
did, yeah.
simplistic explanation. But the funny thing is, it's different from the last movie. Is Genesis history. In the last movie, it was God brought the light, and that was the end of it. Brought the light.
That's
from
right.
this start. I brought it. In this movie, it's changed a little. In this movie, it was because they shoehorned, the red all that the space expanding and all that sort of thing. Shoehorned the Bible into that,
Yeah.
and it was, and then they came up with something very sciencey sounding that it's obviously it's not just space expanding, it's time as well, and light. So you see, God stretched out the light while he was stretching out the heavens. So that's how it got here, according to this movie, which is different from the last movie, and that wasn't that long
Yeah.
ago, which is rather
Well,
shocking.
maybe the next movie will have light being FedExed into Eden.
Wouldn't be surprised, honestly, because they don't even know how many firmaments there are. So how can they even talk about these bigger issues of distant starlight problem when there's a firmament that's below the sky, a firmament that is kind of the sky, and then one above the sky? So who knows?
Well, this is cutting edge science if it's like 700 AD.
Oh, they of course trotted out. We find billions of dead things laid down by water all over the earth, which was cutting edge in the 1700s.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys about like kind of the dating of it, because I've been following this film for a lot of years, and they did all these interviews. As far as I can tell, they did all these interviews in 2011, and they haven't done a new interview since then. Like, does that come across? Is that, or did they reshoot anything that made it sound like it was more advanced, more or newer than that?
See, it was all vague. That's the thing. It was all
For the-
stretched out the light. That doesn't need to be updated. If you're going to get people to swallow stretched out the light, you can use that forever. But I don't. I was unable to pin
other than the
down.
flashy visuals, from what I've been hearing from the reports and the stuff that I've seen, they're not nearly this. They're not as nearly detailed as the kinds of arguments you would actually get if you were to read any of their papers by Menton or anybody else, Vardaman and all the rest, at AIG or ICR. They can get kind of specific. Of course, the moment they get specific, they start bogging down in details. Plus, I really don't think Eric, his little eyeballs are going to glaze over if anybody tries to get technical. So I don't think anything of that is ever going to make it to the cutting room floor.
Indeed. And Jackson, did you catch anything that appeared to be like dated, or was it all just the timeless foolishness?
Nothing that made me think about the date. I didn't hear anything that made me think, oh, Dwayne Gish. A few things were, Kent Hovind, which dated it a bit, but most of the stuff, I don't think so. Oh,
well, the Lucy chimp stuff, we know from what Paul had analyzed there that this is stuff that's very old creationism that's just being recycled. So that's pretty dated. And the fact that they were adopting plate tectonics as a prediction was clearly more recent, because that's parasitizing from 1990s on creationism. So it has evolved in a weird sort of way.
They, of course, pulled out, it's in all the science textbooks. They're forcing the kids to learn it. The ACLU is keeping religion from the students, even though that's
that'd be standard lore. You could have read that in literally any anti-evolution tract from 1970 down to the present, and I anticipate you will never ever find a spot where they aren't using that argument.
Well, hold on. They're not keeping religion from the students. Remember,
Christianity.
There are only two religions on the
two
entire
worldviews.
planet. Yeah. One religion is the God's
true
religion,
one, theirs,
which is and that one true religion is one of two, and that one would be, of course, the creationist viewpoint, and the other is secularism. That's a
Which
religion.
includes
See, you
Hinduism and
understand it
Taoism
completely.
and all the
See
other
how simple
religions.
it is?
Absolutely. So everybody who is not a creationist is purely a secularist, and that is the religion
Or
of
the backsliders, those terrible people who are theistic evolutionists. Ooh.
Oh yeah. Oh, they talked
People
about that.
who are
Kent Hovind.
older
Yes,
creationists,
that was
And
mentioned.
him
or
mentioned
intelligent designers who don't accept creationism that way. So that when you look at their apologetics, how they deal with things, if they want to go into like bacterial flagella, they can't use their own in-house people because none of them do it. So they'll have to allude to a Michael Behe or somebody like that, in which case they will always, in their written material, put a little caveat at the bottom saying, now, Mr. Behe does not accept the age of the earth issues, and he's bought into all of the standard chronology, and bear that in mind. But meanwhile, we're going to take everything else he says as gospel.
Well, they mentioned Alan Fiducia, of course.
Oh, tell me about that. What did they
Oh, it
say
was
from him?
just a brief. They just briefly mentioned him. Said, "Oh, hey, there's a leading evolutionist that no one cares about anymore, who goes against the scientific consensus." I mean, that was pretty much it. They were like, "Hey, look at this guy. Keep going."
Yeah, he's the obligatory one, and there's nobody else. There's a few other minor ones that they could have called attention to. Rubin, for example, on dinosaur lungs and a few things. You see that trotting out still in their apologetics. But I'd love to look over the editorial board over their shoulder to see how Eric and company are assembling all this, because Paul, I think, has hit upon a relevant idea that they've interviewed probably lots of footage, and they've decided what they want to trim down to fit into their framework. And they want things that are going to be very comfortable and reinforcing of what Eric's version of the universe is. So nothing that appears on the screen will be bothering him because he has a very vague notion about everything. He's got a lot of latitude to play with.
Yeah, I mean, the creationists could have said anything, and in some cases they did. They could even tell you multiple contradicting interpretations of these ideas that they've shoehorned into
Well, we
a
know
biblical framework.
Paul has just skewered Eric on examples of
but I
where
mean,
he's
he
just
wouldn't
basically
know.
smiling and nodding his head,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
he's just taken everything in, and there's nobody home on that.
Yeah, Eric would not know if he talked to two different creationists on an issue and they gave him two different answers to the issue. He would just go, "Yep," to both.
He would not. He would say "wow" or "amazing."
yes, he
And that would be about it. He's very much like his father's son. Kent Hovind is a bumptious, boisterous guy, but he's not a primary source person. He's copied other creationists, usually very older stuff. Now, Eric is coming from a younger generation, so he's not as quite wacky fixed as Kent is. He's got more of a smorgasbord approach, and you can see the fact that he's glommed onto a bunch of people who straddle that line between Institute for Creation Research and Answers in Genesis. And they're all, to be fair, air quotes, mainstream creationists. I mean, he's not riffing off of Karl Baugh. He's not riffing off of, oddly, some of the people that his dad plays off of, like the ones that find the chariot wheels in the middle of the Red Sea and stuff like that.
Ooh,
That's
that was
actually
a funny
lower
story.
level. So he's really trying to be authority figure-ish. He's going after upper level as authority figures.
It's really funny how that whole story actually got started. It came from a satiric. For anyone who doesn't know, that story that the chariots were found in the Red Sea from Exodus. That story started on a website kind of like The Onion, and then a whole bunch of Christians saw it and started like posting it everywhere, not realizing.
And then Ron Wyatt went off and he was doing his little excavations there, and his wife has upheld the work that he was doing, and it's just a real rib tickler to watch.
Oh yeah, it was really funny. They didn't really mention the Tower of, as Bodhi calls it, Babel or Babel. I don't know how it's pronounced.
Hey, whichever you want to do. In any case, it's
I only wrote a book on it. I don't really know how it's pronounced.
Well, remember, it was at this point in the movie where somebody decided that, okay, we've had enough of the carrot, time to bring out the stick. And they had Ray Comfort issue The Threat of Hell,
Oh yeah.
That's
Ooh.
hey, we like y'all and all that, but you better believe everything we just told you, because hell. And
Yeah, the Jonathan Edwards brand of fire and brimstone. That's pretty clear on.
Indeed.
Yeah, I can understand. It'd be funny
Jonathan
if they had
Edwards,
tried to delve
wow.
into Babel.
That is a reference,
Because there's
RJ. That's an impressive reference.
Hmm?
I'm impressed by that reference, RJ,
Of
to
which
Jonathan
what?
Edwards.
Oh yeah, well he's the classic 18th. I think he's 18th or no, early 19th century somewhere. I forget the
Yeah.
chronology on him, but I recommend people read his Fire and Brimstone things. I mean,
Oh,
he was a
absolutely.
very influential evangelical, and
Yeah.
that worldview particularly pertains to very conservative Protestantism, and it filters all over the planet and pops up as a side issue there. So yeah, that's not at all uncommon. It's you don't find that in liberal churches. You don't really find it so often in the kinds of conservative but more buttoned down denominations that Philip Johnson and the intelligent designers would run amongst. But the snake handler set, that's going to be in a phenomenon that would be perfectly comfortable on that.
Yeah, they the only real history they talked about was they just kind of lumped all of it in together and called it anthropology in quotes.
Mm.
Like everything about Lucy on up, which was another funny thing. The guy, Dr. Jackson, he said he had a quote debate, but judging by the fact that he couldn't distinguish spontaneous generation from abiogenesis, I'm not sure
Yeah,
as
it
much of a
must have been
debate.
a fun one to think
So,
of. Yeah, yeah.
he said I was doing a debate with this guy, and I said, give me one example of a transitional fossil between apes and humans, which find one between dogs and mammals. But anyways, so he makes it sound as though the guy he was talking to couldn't find one, and he is like, oh, it's the literature is replete with them, and then he says, the guy tells me Australopithecus africanus, so it's like, oh, so the guy actually gave you an example. But then as soon as he says that, he said he turned to the audience and said, now let's talk about mythology. So it's like, wait a minute, even though you
Yeah,
asked,
well, remember the guy is so dated. As Paul, you did a beautiful job on that. I love the fact that you had tracked that down to Dwayne Gish on the stuff about the curved toes of
oh yeah,
Lucy
that was
and all
wonderful.
that. I didn't have that in my bibliography, and I do, thanks to you on that. And your thing that Bill Hudlow gave you about that bit from where Jackson was flat out talking in only just a couple years ago, that ridiculous notion that Neanderthals had been reclassified in all the science literature, that was just preposterously wrong. And to actually see him saying that right in front of you is just an amazing thing, because this guy clearly doesn't know diddly.
Mm.
If this was a regular movie night, we have a little soundbite that would apply to that. But we're not gonna.
Yes,
we're
we
not.
don't know Jack.
We're not gonna play that now because this is a respectable show. But oh hey, here's the thing.
Yeah, we're doing more science analysis in here.
Yeah,
Here's
I don't know. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and this is just an aside. Did you notice that when they were talking about the flood, they hit the ark and all that sort of thing? Does anybody notice any arcs that show up in these have to look suspiciously freaking identical to Ken Ham's monstrosity that he had constructed over there?
Well, that's the new archetype now. Yeah,
well, yeah,
they look like great big floating shoe boxes back in the 1970s.
RJ.
And so the ark has evolved over time, and now
that
they
was
look
one
like
of the
super
things.
tankers.
Well, that's one of the things, evidently, that the Ark Encounter talks about. They have like little videos where it says, this is why Utnapishtim's Ark couldn't have floated, because it looked like a giant shoebox. Flood, which would have absolutely blown the flood out of the water.
Thermal balances, one of the things that sank the either the vapor canopy or the ice canopy theory, but the vapor canopy too. Carl Baugh still kind of thinks about this, that the atmosphere was super duper thick in the pre-flood era, and so that's allowed Dimetrodon dinosaurs. He actually used that term to grow as big.
Well, RJ, you might not be surprised, but they brought up giant insects.
Indeed.
briefly, but they brought them
Yeah,
up.
so that's still,
They
yeah,
said,
that's still floating around in there. It doesn't pop up. I'd love to know who they were relying on for that little tidbit, because it's actually kind of an odd little side issue. We know, in fact, why there were large insects, because oxygen levels during the Carboniferous were up to about 50%, and they were very, very intense. And so you had just more bang for the buck, and insects, which are capable of breathing through their skin, had a much better environment on that. And when the oxygen levels dropped afterwards, plunging after the Permian mass extinction down to only like 12% or so, you've been gasping for breath under those circumstances. But anyway, the idea that the vapor canopy, one of the people that did an analysis of early flood geology, pointed out that one tiny little problem with the density of atmosphere that they were proposing is that the wavelength of light that plants need to survive can't make it through that canopy. Okay. So plants would have dropped dead under those circumstances, which is probably one of the reasons why the vapor canopy is not so popular in creationist circles these days. They have to constantly move the goalposts.
Jackson, you saw Fino's question. Good.
Yeah,
Yes.
I actually just got on Wikipedia to look it up, and it says, quote, gopher wood is a term used once in the Bible for the substance from which Noah's Ark was built. Some English Bibles attempt a translation. Older English translations leave it untranslated.
Yeah, it's probably from a spot from Gulf. Probably some mythological or real estate thing that was figured in stuff, because we don't have any of the primary sources to go on. We don't really know much about it.
Oh, okay.
The Babel issue that you brought up is really a useful one, because there's not really much creationists for them to copy. The Babel people have never really thought through what the language transmissions were. How do they account for Mesoamerican languages within a Babel context? It's just a complete mess. And so there's nobody for them to draw on. So it would have been fun to see them try.
Yeah, this is apparently a point in the movie. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
You go, Jackson.
Oh, no, you go ahead. I've been talking a lot more than you. You go ahead.
I was just going to point out that this is the point in the movie where I was basically just praying for the end. And as I can see, my writing was getting larger and more scribbly. And I started thinking thoughts that were off topic specifically for the movie, but in general, some of my objections. Like, which one of them said, it was the Jesus thing. God had to abandon his son. There was no other way. Had to abandon his son.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, and the odd thought that came into my head was abandoned his son. So we're refuting the whole Trinity. The whole Trinity idea is now in a dumpster.
Oh, you're not wanting detailed theological speculations from anybody doing a creationist video, are you?
RJ, I think that's kind of a self contradicting statement, isn't it? Detailed theology.
Yeah, it's like the theology of Harry Potter. You know, there's just only so much you can do with it.
I swear I saw a video where someone said, was it Aaron Ra? That might have been, where he said, a professional theologian. What is that?
I think Richard Dawkins cured it once when he was like, it's like talking about unicornology. You know, I mean, it's just really not a field, but they think it is.
And then it was okay. Adam brought death, and Jesus brought back life. This is how silly I was at the time. The next thing I wrote was, so why do we still have death then? So, I mean, it's like either that was a failed solution, or it's all a happy story. I'm going with option two.
But also, they say there was no death, but and maybe I'm being pedantic, I don't know, but cell death was evidently occurring all the time because everyone was vegetarian. So there's a whole lot of digestion of plant material, which is killing cells. So was there no death, or was there death?
All right, Jackson. That's enough. That's enough out of you. Plants are not life. Plants are not life, and everything was very good. You understand?
Everything is animal, mineral, or vegetable.
Kale doesn't count. Hugh Ross brings up a lot of those points because
Mhm.
over in Old Earth Creationism land, they can't take the position that death is somehow intricate to this sort of stuff. So the kind of juvenile version that you find in Young Earth Creationists, they can easily imagine that death doesn't happen until Adam sinned. And remember, the time frame is extremely short. I mean, there's no real specifics in the Bible. Paul, you might want to jump in on this, whether or not you can remember from your evangelical days and that when anybody ever said just how long it was from creation to the point when Eve decided to munch on the apple. It's unspecified. It might have been only a few weeks. It might have been a year or so, but it's not necessarily much.
It's unspecified, but those who want to really say that everything in Genesis 2 is really all happening on day 6 kind of have to almost place it in one day, even though, that afternoon they named all the animals. So that's very cool. Even if there's only 7,000 animal types as kind,
So
as
wait,
they say.
So if that happened on day 6, then what was God doing resting on day 7?
Yeah, boy, things fell apart in a hurry, didn't they?
And you don't take a nap.
This is the guy that doesn't really have a good management on things. First he creates all of this pretty life, and then he creates Adam, and Adam is really bored really quickly, so he makes a woman for him, and then she immediately listens to the talking snake and goes into the tree that he makes a point of putting in there, right in their way, and she eats the apple, and then everything goes to smithereens, and they got to kick him out, and all of this happens in less time than a miniseries on Hulu.
I mean, I imagine God, like, he creates everything and he's like, oh, I'm super tired. And, he's got his recliner and he finally sits in there and he pulls up the seat and then he hears them eating from the apple and he says, oh, me, dang it. I got to go fix things again.
Well, he was reading an advanced copy of Game of Thrones and it really occupied him.
So I was leading to a question. So at one point, Eric had planned for this movie to go all the way up to Tower of Babel, and you guys had talked about floods and Towers of Babel. He did at one point. Eric walked it back and said that this was only going to cover chapters 1, 2, and 3. So
no Babel,
no flood. I assume, right?
Oh no, flood. Flood.
They actually brought the flood in quite a few times.
Yeah, lots of flood references. No Babel though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
the
love
whole
to
freaking show
see
was Babel, but sorry.
Oh yeah,
I'd love to see him really tackle this stuff because from a methods point of view, everything is extremely useful to see what information they think is relevant, who they're relying on for it, what stuff they exclude. And of course, the moment they get into Babel and the Exodus and the flood issues, they are bumping into Mesopotamian and Egyptian history and chronology, and by indirection or by omission, China and Catalhulic over in the Anatolia, and a mass of data theoretically they'd need to account for, but nobody in their framework really has accounted for.
I think you guys may have noticed in some of the marketing material, not all of it though, some of the marketing material, it called this part 1. It was Genesis part 1.
Yeah, yeah. It said to be continued at the end.
Yeah, did it?
And if you and see, Jackson was deceived by the rolling of the credits. I, however, noticed that the house lights
stuck it out.
Yes, the house lights had not come up yet. So I stayed, much as there was that primal instinct to bolt. I stayed.
Oh well, sorry.
That's the rules in a theater. You learn that from going to Disney films. If the house lights are not up, there's more coming. And sure enough, stayed. There was credits. These folks donated. Those folks donated. Blah 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 blah. And then they got into the post show, which I can summarize briefly. But prior to getting into the post show, that was everything from during the show that I thought was important. Has little foldy corners in the book. Oddly enough, the thing about it being a cute crab, though, that has a foldy corner. So, like I told you, I was kind of losing it by that point in the movie. So, Jackson, if you want to add anything else from the bulk of the movie before I quickly summarize the post show, now would be the time. That's all I've got from the actual film itself.
I think Jackson has given you a go ahead.
Okay.
Oops, sorry about that. I did not realize that my mic was off or was still off.
See,
I guess
that's what makes it funny.
The only thing that really shook me, but we already talked about was the rejection of the genetic similarities. That was really the only thing that just made me stop and go, what?
It especially since they put so much stock in. Look, these two skulls look alike. They're all human. Look, these don't look alike. They can't possibly be related. So similarities are good over here, but they're not good over there.
I mean, aside from that and the rapid fire arguments that they were putting out, especially Dr. Jackson, who just was so arrogantly ignorant about everything he said. He just said it with the air of "I'm better than you." And it, I just did not like
he's a lifelong member of Mensa. He mentions that every time he's being interviewed.
Really?
Yet another reason to be leery of it.
Not
So
just
is
a
Richard
member,
Milton.
a lifelong member, which whatever the hell that means.
He may guess he can do those little rotation puzzle things, but apparently follow up on scholarship and note recent science work is not in his skill set.
But that was pretty much the only thing that really shocked me. Everything else was, I think, standard creationist material.
They trotted out the common stuff that we see repeated very frequently. Ad nauseum.
Short-lived comets.
Yes, indeed.
It's only 100, a million years old at the most, or whatever it was. Yeah.
Mistake of mentioning the lunar dust myth, did they?
No, skipped over that one.
Oh boy. Well, that's at least something. I would have really loved that, because then I would have just lit into them like a house of fire.
They didn't say anything about not enough sediment in the oceans. They skipped a lot of the old charmers. All right.
Some of the old traditional ones that they sit around in the fire, taking out an old pipe and a wonderful old thing of vintage whiskey, and repeating the old tales that make them feel so that they were told on their mother's knee.
All right.
I mean, I'm almost surprised that the accuracy with which they relayed some of the evolutionist stuff. I mean, aside from the spontaneous generation as abiogenesis, aside from that, they were pretty decent with relaying a few evolutionist ideas. But
yes, but then the shoehorning immediately followed.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And see, the Bible predicted this way after it was never before, but after.
Yeah, the retroact. It's amazing that there aren't creationists at the forefront of every scientific discipline, waving the Bible, saying, or looking or holding all of these testable predictions that they claim to have, and then the evolutionists come along with all these verified testable predictions, which they have to shoehorn later. But oh well.
Indeed. And apparently the prefix pre does not hold any particular meaning for these folks.
Well, remember, if you can regard the Bible as prophetically accurate when that also is retrofitting, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump to do that with everything else that they want to incorporate.
Indeed. Well, the spooky thing about this was apparently there's no competition in creationist circles. We think this big organization would want to steal the business from that big. Apparently, no. Apparently, it's all one big happy partnership. Just by the amount of people.
Well, at least the ones they do. The ones that you saw on the show are all ones who have straddled the line between ICR and AIG. And even if they'd included Snelling, that would be the same case. That sometimes he's posting there, sometimes he's posting at Answers in Genesis for their research journal, and the stuff, of course, because of the schism that Ham had, some of the stuff ends up at creation.com, because that's the Creation Ministries International, the European and Australian branch, whereas all the American bunch is the official Answers in Genesis. But the people doing the writing cross-fertilize and flip back and forth between those and another. What we're missing from the show are the lower echelon wingnuts, the Karl Baugh types that still push Paluxy tracks, things like that. Those are the ones that you didn't see on the show. So you're seeing the button-down professional creationists.
They briefly mentioned dinosaur. They briefly mentioned dinosaur-human fossils together, simply asserting that there are.
But they didn't
we
go
have
into
the
details.
evidence. Yes, we have evidence. Where is it? Look over here, shiny object. Yeah, that's what they did.
Yeah, here we go. Laser pointer. Whoop, whoop.
Exactly. But all right. Well, if there's nothing else on the guts of the movie, I will quickly summarize the after show, which came after the credits. Which and Jackson, I was just teasing you. You didn't miss anything. Here's what it was. They had a little half circle of chairs. Eric was at the center, and that was the other thing. He did not appear in the movie. Just at the end, I would have thought he would have because he's fairly good at presenting. But
No Eric.
no, it was oddly Eric.
Well, they had the voice of God on there. I mean, why would you want to listen to him?
But yeah, the post show thing they did, their little panel discussion / echo chamber. It started out with Eric giving shout outs to AIG. I guess he had to bow to Ken, who was sitting off to his left there. So he did that. Ham went on with what God says is the important thing. You can take God's word or man's word. Gee, we've never heard that before. Ham also brought up the no absolute authority. You can do whatever you want. Without religion, we'd be out. Exactly. It would just be awful if you don't have a supreme authority. You would have no idea that stealing your neighbor's car is not really the nicest thing to do. Let's see. But yeah, why? Because without that, we might as well just be all animals. Got news for you, Kenny. We're animals.
Well, heck, if it weren't for the Bible, we wouldn't know not to own people. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and that's
we wouldn't know how many shekels to pay more accurately.
Indeed, or
how severely, you need to have the right accounting for it. Yeah,
or how severely your slaves may be beaten. Thank God we have these. Thank God. Aha! See what I did there? We have the supreme authority. But all right, yeah, God's word. That's where he trotted out again. God's word versus man's word. Those are the two religions. I know you thought there were a bunch of religions, but apparently there's not. There's only two. And
well, yeah, I mean that's in a lot of presuppositional apologetics. You'll see that it's only Christianity, or it's everything else, every other conceivable worldview.
You can't play presupposition games. Everybody gets to play presupposition games. They got to keep the field down.
But I mean, Christianity is not a single point of view. It is one of this guy's Christianity is different from the guy standing to his left's Christianity is different from the guy standing to his left's Christianity.
And if you break them into groups, logically, they're all pretty tiny. Well, most are pretty tiny. Okay, except for Rome. And wait, Rome.
They just don't know it because they operate in the same echo chamber.
Wait, that's right. Roman Catholicism is not. That's not even technically Christianity, according to these folks, right? They don't count.
Exactly.
They've been excluded.
Yeah, and now if you go over to Eastern Orthodoxy, they have a totally different perspective on there. The Eastern Orthodox regard the Catholics as that kind of errant group that haven't quite wised up that the patriarch is really in charge. And then way over in the corner, there are those weird Protestants that nobody really wants to think about at all because they're just too silly.
Oh, but in Ray Comfort's most recent movie, the one about suicide, he actually had a girl on there who said, he asked her, "Do you believe in God?" She said, "Yes." He said, "Are you a Christian?" She said, "No." He said, "What are you?" She said, "I'm a Catholic."
Oh, no scripting there.
Oh, well, there may be a context in which, yes, that they regard that Christianity as a denomination. And then the other one that I really love that you hear every once in a while is they'll say, "I don't have a religion. I believe in Jesus."
Yeah.
Indeed.
That other people have religions. They have the truth. A lot of little tropes that pop up on this, but nevertheless, the fact remains that you've got umpteen different versions of everything, and it all depends on if you look at everybody's religion beliefs and try to chalk up a list of all the common elements that are true in them, you find out that there ain't anything on the list.
And while we're still on Ham, let's not gloss over the fact that Ken Ham never misses an opportunity, although he had to kind of sugarcoat it this time and not say it right out. With the whole, without a supreme authority, you could just do whatever and act like animals, because God defined all these things for us, like marriage is one man and one woman, and then just right on to the next thing. So
Except for Solomon
Except
and
except for
David
everybody in
and
the Old
everybody else.
Testament.
yeah. One man, one woman, one man, one woman, and the woman slaves. Yeah, okay. But yes, there was a slight hint of Ken Hand's usual bigotry that made its way to the surface there. Let's see. Georgia took a reprise of the no new info argument.
Of which she is such an astonishingly ill-informed source.
Yeah, let's see. DNA degrades with change. It doesn't make new things. That was another one from her.
Never mind that we can see that it does.
Let's see. Faulkner said, let's see, his whole thing boiled down to God didn't use millions of years like those wacky people that think the universe is more than 6,000 years old. Can you believe those folks? Yeah, God didn't.
Yeah, doesn't saying "cuz" sound so much more impressive?
Yeah, well, that was essentially the silent end to that whole assertion that God didn't use millions of years. No.
He used a tornado.
No, yes, exactly. No supporting argument.
That's so much better. Now it's clear it's not any of this pseudoscience junk. It's a sudden dust storm produces a human being.
Yeah. And comfort issue, the threat of hell again. What else? Evolution was the theory of evolution only came into existence to exclude God. That's what they were thinking.
Oh yeah, that was the beginning and the end of it. Like, it was atheistic evolution, not just evolution. If you accept evolution, you are by definition an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, poor Asa Gray apparently didn't know that in the memo that came out in 1860.
And let's see what else. Oh, Zwain, the guy the guy. He was the movie making guy. He indicates that this movie is going to cause revolution. So
indeed,
be prepared.
Well, the intelligent designers say the same thing about their stuff. Boy, and their books, the various things that have come out, these are just going to cause an epochal thing, and it's going to be the death knell of Darwinism. And that, as Mark Twain said, the rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated. Well, they've been saying the same thing about evolution for the last 150 years, and somehow it just keeps on kicking along with all those fact things.
Yeah. And Eric actually, at that point, used the term civil unrest.
Ooh, there's going to be people running around in the streets saying, Australopithecines, no, Australopithecines, yes. Yeah, let's look for that.
Absolutely. And then it was Ham's turn. He threw out more just an animal nonsense, to which I say, just get rid of just. Don't want to.
You have no meaning. You are worthless if you came about by evolution. You can't ever have self meaning.
Exactly.
You have all of your meaning has to be referential to something outside of the universe.
Oh, and that's another. I don't remember.
On behalf of the animals, I will say that I have conducted a detailed survey, and all of the primates are extremely having to be said that they are closely related to Ken Ham.
You know what? I don't remember what part in the movie it was, but the argument was actually made again that the reason we can't believe what you three and I consider to be the age of the universe, the reason that can't be true is because that means that death had to occur before the fall, and the Bible says it didn't. So the reason we can't believe these things is because it will affect our current beliefs. That was produced as evidence as to why something was untrue.
Classic. That's inherent young Earth creationist dogma from the get-go.
Yeah.
Starting with a Henry Morris gang long before any of the people on their stage were born.
Yeah, you have to accept Genesis, because if it didn't happen that way, then if there's millions of years, Genesis can't be true, and you have to accept Genesis, because if you don't accept Genesis, then the rest of the Gospels are not true. Okay, so you mean it'll make us unhappy? If you really boil it down, what he's saying is it'll make us unhappy if what you're talking about is true. So we're not going to believe what you say. That is our evidence.
Well, remember, this is the word of God. You know, you don't want to take what are you going to believe, the word of God or all of the senses and all of the evidence that you've ever seen?
Absolutely. There's man's word and there's God's word. What's the difference? I've seen man.
And yet here they're caught on a weird circumstance, because also it's a thread in natural theology that you can know God by the works of nature. So there's a streak in them that want to look up all the gee whiz stuff, like the elephant's trunk. I was just commenting on that on Twitter earlier. And so there's a lot of these wonderful complexity of things. But they can only go so far with that before you start bumping into the fact that it all looks like it's actually evolved and it's natural mutations, and here they can trace everything.
I mean, that has a very diverse and long lineage. I'm very surprised that they would choose the elephant's trunk, especially when we have it picked all the way. We can go all the way back to the Tethitharians, who are at the base of Proboscidea and Sirenia.
Jackson, you're presuming that anybody that's using this argument has ever bothered to read any of the science works.
You're right, I am. I apologize. Let me go.
Silly boy, just wash your mouth out. That's absolute silly talk. These people have got that posting at Answers in Genesis that they tossed at me about the thing today. I immediately added this Laura Veit, who's now one of the current little apologists. She's been doing quite a lot for them lately. There's no sources in it at all, not even creationist ones. It's just simply stuff these ripped off of the internet, essentially, and revamped and said about how wonderful and incredible the elephant's trunk is, and it's so sensitive and blah blah blah. And never mind that there's a whole technical literature out there that she's never going to look at.
Wait, I don't see it. I'll have to elephant trunk. I'll have to look.
Yeah, Laura Veit, and it was just a brand new posting. It's at AIG. They just tossed it up today, and I as SciStrike knows, when and because he does the same sort of things, we push back. And so if they're going to bring up a thing, I'm gonna.
What did you say is the name of the lady?
Laura, Viet is her last name, Veit, and Laura, I think, is her first name. Karen, maybe it's Karen. There we go.
Elephant the Giant with Specialized Tools, August 11th.
Yeah, it was 27. That bumped my story to the
Not a source.
Holy crap, you're right. There is nothing here.
And she hasn't done a thing. There's a guy over at the Discovery Institute. Oh, God, I can't think of his name right off the bat. He's a biologist and a medical doctor, and he puts up these postings over and over and over again, these gee whiz postings, I call them, exactly the same format, longer than Veit's, frankly. Not a single source in any of them, ever.
Yeah, this is just look at how cool elephants are. Aren't they great?
I classify all those as gee whiz.
Oh yeah,
AIG
is famous for
that's
those.
the category. They're just saying, "Wow, isn't that amazing?" And
so
you almost invariably there's an evolutionary history to it, and when you start poking around at it on the genetics and the developmental biology, sometimes an area is new and cutting edge. They're just starting work on it. Some cases they're very difficult to do, like as I pointed out about how hard it is to study ant metapleural glands. But,
or stingrays. There's very little material on the origin of stingrays. There are like a very few papers on the convergent evolution of this flattened body plans in sharks and stingrays, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, eventually you'll find things coming back through to an issue because the science catches up to it, where they now knew the developmental genes involved. And that's when things start jump starting. So I kind of focus in on stuff that relates to paleogenomics and all of that stuff. Like, horse teeth. Up until fairly recently, they didn't know an awful lot about the genetics of it, but now they're coming back at it and they're starting to pin down what genes are involved in the producing of cusps and stuff on teeth. So I'm expecting there'll be a lot of stuff on mammoths, horse teeth evolution and stuff in the next 15, 20 years as they start applying all of these new tools, and it'll all be ignored by creationists.
Teeth aren't very interesting, RJ. It's just that, well, except for Posidentomes, which they offhandedly rejected, as we saw recently. But anyways, I
love the fact that I cited it in Slam Dunk about how they've retro-engineered over 100 million years worth of mammal teeth,
it's
including
funny,
extinct forms.
So we were looking at a paper by Genesis recently on this shrew rat that was found in Indonesia.
Oh yeah,
by the professor I work for, and so I ran across this article and I showed it to him, and he just looked it over and said, "They don't even argue anything."
There's something.
It's the science equivalent of saying bullpucky.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. He just kind of looked it over and said, oh, okay, they don't really argue anything, but all right.
There's a, was it a, what about the cotton? Wasn't there a cotton article from EIG out a little while? It was another Gee Whiz, that cotton was intelligently designed because he knew people were going to come out and want to make thread. Anyway.
Oh yeah, that's part of that Dr. Pangloss approach. If you're familiar with old Dr. Pangloss from Voltaire, Candide, the idea that this is the best of all possible worlds. Hugh Ross is prone to these kind of arguments too. That that there had to be all these things done, so you had to have a mass extinction in order to get the dinosaurs out of the way, because then you had to have mammals, and then you had to have certain crops, and you had to have monocots, because you had to have things that would eventually lead to stuff that we could be used, you know, blah blah blah. And cotton or any of the other seed crops and wheat, argue, were intentionally designed because they're there for our benefit. But every one of them has got an evolutionary background. And so the moment you start looking at it, you're going to see what they're leaving out.
Indeed. Paul, were you here for the bananas part?
I was, and I laughed.
Okay, all right, cool. Very good. All right.
Good times, good times.
Indeed. Bananas again.
Good
All
times, the good times. And then we saw the credits to the movie, and we were reminded these are real people who are actually saying this crap for serious.
Indeed.
Who get paid lots of money to say it too.
Yeah, some people are giving him money to do it.
There's a pay for a lot of money. Holy moly. Remember, Ken Ham pulls down 150 grand a year.
I think it's higher than that, but that'll be saved that for another time.
Well, yeah, he gets about 40 or 50,000 perks too. So I mean, he's really more like about 200,000 a year, which is damn good. And Steve Meyer over at the Discovery Institute gets about 150 a year. Meanwhile, it depend on GoFundMe's and Patreons. Please.
Indeed. And with Ham, I mean, look, we're just looking at the cash. Let's not forget that kick-ass yacht he's got now.
Oh, he's got a yacht? Oh, yes, the one that doesn't have any water underneath it. Although with global warming, you know, maybe maybe they'll have some sea level rising.
Well, my home will become beachfront property before his Ark Park does.
Indeed. And RJ, by the way, I saw what you did there before when you were talking about the Ark, and you mentioned that was a specific archetype. I was very amused by that. Didn't say anything at the time. Didn't say anything at the time, but well done, my friend.
Ark has gone through a long design modality, and I remember I discussed the old Ark that was shown in the Dynamania thing, the shows back in the 70s and 80s, and it was just basically your stupid box. And that's hilarious.
Absolutely. Do you remember how they showed how seaworthy the box was?
Yeah, they put a sealed container in there and showed it bobbed up and down. And I could just imagine how incredibly seasick any animals would be, even from their little model. The thing is just careening back and forth. Yes, if it's a sealed container, a can will float. I mean, in there, because it's a sealed container. It's buoyant. But the other problems is that it's still made of damn wood.
Indeed.
But all of this new version that looks like a super tanker. Somebody on the internet was saying that the Titanic went down, and I said, well, actually, those ships didn't have a front end like that. That this was not like that. Was a relatively recent design trend that starts popping up in some of the more advanced designs of the 1940s. Really standard because they knew had better hydrodynamic things. So you find super tankers and stuff in the 60s, 70s, and 80s having those bulge front boats. But so they're parasitically following things through on the still problem that you can't make a boat out of wood that big without it hogging and leaking. Sorry.
Absolutely. One, come apart from the flexing. Two, you can't seal a wooden boat. There's unless you're going to coat it with fiberglass, which although apparently they had Tyvek, Noah had Tyvek. I don't know if you saw the construction.
That actually, as we now know, the gopher wood is actually an early form of laminate. That
Indeed. But
I mean, he also
The great
had
Wildwood
modern
Forest.
day construction technique.
yeah, indeed.
Even though the Ark Park is currently going to, or is already showing signs of needing renovation on the outside because it's weathering. That's ironic.
That was supposed to be a good
God's
thing.
vengeance shall come upon them, and there shall be mildew. And God saw that it was good because he's actually in favor of Darwin.
When we went to
He is the fossil genie.
when we went to Tennessee, for the eclipse thing that Sean Hufford organized, which was great, by the way. That was an amazing thing. One of the things I saw on the way when I was close was a billboard for the Ark Park. Sean said I couldn't go because he noticed I had a Zippo. So anyway, all right. Let me. I'll just blow through this stuff. Let's see what else she said. We're not a byproduct of random processes. Well, no, random. There was a random element, but a lot of evolution and abiogenesis, and actually the universe is pretty much chemistry. I mean, it just happens. A lot of it is not random, but there was a random element. Let's see, Eric, civil unrest. Okay, Ham retook up the just an animal nonsense and the absolute authority nonsense. You know, once would have been enough. Perdom says.
Hashtag Euthyphro dilemma.
Perdom says we're all one race. Okay, that's nice sounding, and it's yep. I'm good with that, except that we don't really have a definition for the word race. Why don't we just say we're all human? And by the way, what the hell does that have to do with your argument? All right.
I mean, you know, they just want to. They understand the tension, and they just kind of want to help it out, whatever way they can, I guess. So
indeed. So
well, humans are the primary core issue of all anti-evolutionists, young Earth creationists or intelligent designers. It's us. We have to be special. We're there because God wants us to be there, and everything else is ancillary. So all of the side issues about comets and anything else are just in service of that big thing. So it's no coincidence that an awful lot of the show apparently had a lot to say about that human issue, because that's the thing that their audience and their theology really is concerned about.
Indeed. And let's see. Ham once again chimed in with his "we're all brown," to just and meaning, you know, to different degrees. There are not people of different colors. We're all the same color, just with a different level. So to that, at the bottom of that page, I just wrote "so" with a question mark. Like, how does that prove his creationist nonsense?
Or in Ham's case, late patriarchal desiccated.
Actually, the joke was made during the after show, which I did not write down here. One of them said that we do have something to the effect that we do have firsthand witness to these events, judging by Ken Ham's age. It actually said that in the end. I was amused. And let's see, Zwain, the movie
He's
dude.
not 900 years old, but he looks like he's 900 years old.
Zwain says we're all one family, to which I responded, and with a question mark. Oddly enough, Eric, I believe it was Eric, made the reference to the Carl Sagan quote, "There's no help coming." You know, meaning like that was a Carl Sagan quote that you know, humans kind of have to take care of things here, and he dismissed that by saying, "Yes, aliens are not coming." Somehow, I'm not thinking that was what Carl Sagan meant.
And no, but that would you wouldn't expect Eric to be accurately quoting Carl Sagan on any subject. So this is kind of goes with the territory.
No, he said the name though. I was happy enough with that. He knows he existed. And then
hey, at least they're not trying to argue that Sagan was a lot nicer to theism than he actually was, which is what I've seen a lot of creationists do.
Oh, we're repainting of the repainting of Carl Sagan as a staunch theist, huh?
Well, both Sagan and Einstein, they both just kind of they will selectively quote mine their works and say, "Aha, see, they were, you know, they were nice to theists." It's like, no, No, not really. If you
Oh,
actually,
David Berlinski and Philip Johnson tried to expropriate Richard Feynman for their side, which was just a hilarious
Ooh.
misapprehension.
That is impressive.
Yeah, and a failure because he was an atheist and very critical of all of them.
And it actually, and that was pretty much it for their little after show. And then the part 2 is coming, and then a little goodbye.
That's where they're going to have all of their science.
Yeah, no doubt. They saved it up for round 2, and then
yeah, it's going to be just going to be like a flood of science data.
Oh, I see what you did there again.
So we'll see you all in 2024 if it takes another 7 years to make.
Indeed. But I don't know. In 7 years, I'm going to.
Oh, well, then they'll have even more science data to ignore.
Indeed. And then just to motivate us all and make us all happy, they closed with the salvation poem, which I'll leave you to look up on your own because I'm not going to put to music. And it was ever so motivational. I was basically motivated to hop into Bob the Wonder Jeep and get the hell out of there.
And hit him up, move him out.
So that's
at least you didn't barf up the popcorn.
Savannah and I were already out by that point. So
well, it was.
So you were missed this wonderful opportunity for evangelical conversion.
That's why you're not a creationist now, Jackson. You could have been saved. You could have been so close.
You were so damn close. It was only a few credits away.
The rapture doesn't happen until after the next movie. Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't know. What's the latest Nibiru prediction? Oh, gee, wait, wrong movie.
Well,
sorry.
Harvey Weinstein hath fallen. We're in the end times for sure.
This time.
Next predicted end date. I told you the joke I want to do, RJ, is I'm going to get a bunch of old shoes and a bunch of dry ice, and in the dead of night, I'm going to put them on church steps, so that the first person out the next morning is going to think everyone just vaporized. All right.
You know, I used to belong to the End of the World a Book of the Month club there, but after about 4 or 5 years, it was getting a little boring.
An awful lot of ends. It's getting repetitive. Well, that's for the movie. That's I would like to say that's all I have. That's all I care to think about.
It's all we remember from the lobotomy.
Absolutely, and I'm glad. I'm glad Paul's here because Paul's got some news that hopefully all of you already know. I'm sure you're following Paul. Paul, tell us how famous you are these days.
How famous I am? Well, I thought that being on national news in Canada was, one level of fame, but that's nothing compared to what happened yesterday, and that is I was called out by name on Answers in Genesis website. I counted 7 times, so I'm told it was actually 9 times that they actually said my real name and talked about how despicable I was.
You wouldn't happen to have a link handy for you wouldn't happen to have a link handy for our viewers, would you?
Yeah, let me.
Well, you're not despicable. You have a cute cartoon.
Oh, absolutely.
No, I'm a disgruntled father, and there were several. There were like the fact that I claimed to be once be a Christian. That's just
can't be up.
Oh yeah,
horrible.
Do you remember back when you were just gruntled?
Oh, Paul, they know true Scotsman, do you?
Oh
no. All right. Well, if you have a link for that stuff, throw it in the
I
public
got
chat
it
so
right
the
here.
viewers.
I can put it on the internal chat. I don't think I'm admin on the outside.
How the hell can that be? Say hi in the public chat. I will spanner you immediately.
Oh wait, I am.
You should be.
No.
Jesus, we can trust it.
I realized I'm not spannered. No.
I don't. Did you just type hi? There you go. Let me span. I don't know how I could have not spannered you. I mean, Jesus,
well,
is anybody?
Disgruntled Dads from Canada. I think that's a really good club name.
There you go. You are spannered. You may post at will.
Anyway, so I have officially now been. I've joined the club of people that Ken Ham dislikes by name.
That's amazing.
Well, hell, I feel slighted.
So those of you who think you're special just because you're blocked by Ken, that's nothing.
I don't know. I mean, I've been poking him occasionally. Nothing I think I've done is or will be as funny as what Tony Hackenslash said to Ken, which, if anyone doesn't know, Tony told him when the ark closes down, we're going to turn it into a casino, and we'll make Ken a topless bartender. That
Oh,
promptly
dear.
got him blocked.
Oh, that could put you off feed for a while.
Yeah, I think I got it from making the reference that when the ark closes down, us Pastafarians, who are rather fond of pirates and pirate ships, are going to make it into the ceremonial pirate ship for the Flying Spaghetti Monster, and that was when I lost direct access to Ken's
You could put a
activities.
different pasta form in each one of the little boxes that they have along the way. The cages.
I've been trying to get blocked. I think maybe his trigger phrase is "arc closed down" or "arc closed." Maybe I just have to say that to him, and he'll boot me because he refuses to kick. Actually, let me take a look at that right now and see if that has changed. And the verdict is nope. He still has not blocked me. Okay.
Nice. All right, you got some work to do. All right, I think we've beaten this horse to dust. And is there anything else, Jackson? You sat through this nonsense. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Not really. The part I found truly funniest was the pterodactyls screeching. Yeah, exactly. That was literally the sound they made. I could not contain.
Boy, they can't do better than me. They're pretty sad.
Oh, wait. We're missing Jackson. We're missing something.
Huh?
You had given me a link to one of your videos that you wanted to show.
Oh,
how could we miss
so,
that? Give us a little background first, and then we'll do it.
Oh, on human evolution stuff. Yeah, background to that.
So they made a whole bunch of claims regarding anthropology or regarding an attempt at anthropology. And so if you really want to see what the anthropologists say, because I have a few books on anthropology and I've taken a class in anthropology, so I am much closer to the data set than they are. So if you want to know about it, see my video.
More of that book learning stuff again.
All right,
hominin evolution.
I got it queued up. I got it queued up right now. Shall we hit it?
Okay.
Does this look? Oh, yeah, that's right. You can't see. We're not screen sharing. Here's Jackson Wheat's video. Everybody applaud. Here we go. And I will do a screen share so you can see what's going on.
Hominini is a taxonomic tribe of primates comprised of all apes more closely related to chimpanzees, humans, or both than any other apes. In more recent years, however, the term hominin has come to mean just all apes more closely related to humans than any other apes. So that's the way we'll use the term in this video today. Remember that our closest relative is the chimp, with whom we share approximately 95% of our DNA, and our most recent common ancestor with chimps lived between 7 and 5 million years ago. This fact can be verified by both genetic and paleontological data, and it is the latter that we will investigate here. Despite creationists constantly exclaiming that there are no transitional fossils anywhere, the hominin lineage alone is filled with a good many. For more examples of transitional fossils and other lineages, see my video pointing to common ancestry. Interestingly, while there are a plethora of fossils leading to humans, there has been only one discovery of a chimp fossil, which was discovered in 2005. To quote Richard Dawkins in his book, The Greatest Show on Earth, quote, "If anything, it is the chimps, not humans, who today have a right to complain of missing links," close quote. The reason for this is likely that chimps lived in places where fossilization was poor. The ancestors of chimps remained in the African tropical rainforests, while human ancestors moved to the forests and tree savannas. Around the human-chimp split, though, a number of fossils have been found. The oldest is the African ape Sahelanthropus, dating to about 7 million years ago. This species has cranial characteristics of both chimps and Australopithecines, that is, its cranial capacity is between 320 and 380 cubic centimeters. So it might be representative of the common ancestor between them, or a hominin. It is also unknown whether Sahelanthropus was biplymer as well. The femurs also have characteristics intermediate between Miocene apes and later hominins. Next, its canine teeth resemble those of Miocene apes or female chimps but are smaller, which makes sense given that the jaw size of hominins has trended downwards over time. And Orerin has thickened enamel on its molars, which has caused some researchers to put it at the base of the hominin tree. Orerin has some oddities though. For example, its cheek teeth are more like ours than Australopithecines. Despite this, researchers generally agree that we are descended from Australopithecines and will return to these guys shortly. Likely the cheek teeth are a homoplazy or a convergently evolved feature, rather than an ancestrally derived trait. Its cranial capacity hasn't been measured because it has been so poorly preserved. The third African ape is Ardipithecus that lived from 5.6 to 4.4 million years ago and is very likely bipedal, as shown by its tibia. However, the species has a grasping foot like that of all other apes, but unlike other hominins. Aside from that, Ardipithecus has a number of both advanced and primitive traits. The molars had not expanded like those of Australopithecines, the enamel is more like that of chimps, and the humors had a mix of ancestral and derived characteristics. On the other hand, the ulna resembles that of hominins, the canines are less projecting than those of non-hominins, and the molar root pattern is that of hominins. Its cranial capacity ranged from 300 to 350 cubic centimeters. That finishes off the pre-Australopithecine hominins, and our ancestors, the Australopithecines, first appeared around 4.5 million years ago, going extinct around 1.977 million years ago. The Australopithecines were a very diverse bunch, with the earliest being Australopithecus anamensis, who lived about 4 million years ago. Australopithecus anamensis is definitely bipedal by the shape of its tibia, meaning that all later hominins were definitely bipedal, and its teeth had the thickened enamel like that of later hominins. Later species of Australopithecus included Afarensis, Africanus, Boisei, Garhi, and Sediba. Next, Australopithecus afarensis has even more hominin traits, including its smaller canines, enlarged molars and premolars. The molars were expanding. Its pelvis looked much more like ours than earlier primates, and it has a cranial capacity of 380 to 430 cubic centimeters. On the other hand, its canines were still larger than our own, its body was indicative of a facultative tree climber, and its shoulders were oriented like those of modern non-human apes. In other words, it possesses characteristics of both hominins and non-hominins. The earliest of these ever discovered was named Lucy in 1974 by Donald Johanson, and to anyone who thinks Lucy was just a chimp, that belief is diagnostic of a total disconnect from anthropological data. Third, Australopithecus garhi has been regarded by some paleoanthropologists as a direct descendant of Australopithecus afarensis and a possible direct ancestor of Homo. It has more hominin features, such as more thickened enamel, having a tooth arrangement more like that of later hominins, and having a cranial capacity of 450 cubic centimeters. Fourth, Australopithecus africanus had a tooth arrangement even more similar to later hominins and had a larger cranial capacity, ranging from 400 to 500 cubic centimeters. Some anthropologists regard Australopithecus africanus as an ancestor of the robust Australopithecines, which belonged to one genus called Paranthropus that existed from about 2.7 to 1.2 million years ago. The robust Australopithecines had heavier cranial anatomy, including gorilla-like sagittal crests, representing a side branch in the hominin lineage. Our ancestral Australopithecines were called gracile, as opposed to robust. The earliest Homo appeared about 2.8 million years ago, which is represented by a fossil jaw named LD350-1. The dental pattern and age of the jaw puts it as a transition between the earlier Australopithecines and the later Homo habilis, who is the most primitive human species found. Homo habilis is dated from 2.1 to 1.5 million years ago and displays a cranial capacity from 550 to 687 cubic centimeters. This species has features of Australopithecines like its very long arm bones, and later hominins, like its height, and that has made it difficult in the past to classify. Anthropologists wondered if it was a very advanced Australopithecine or a very primitive Homo. Following that, Homo erectus, living from 1.9 million years ago to 143,000 years ago, and having a cranial capacity from 850 to 1100 cubic centimeters, was so named not because it's a facultative biped, but because it's fully bipedal. Now, a note on tool usage in hominins. The first tool makers were Australopithecines around 3 million years ago, which became the Oldowan tool industry about 2.6 million years ago. Acheulean tools were created by Homo habilis around 1.8 million years ago, which included the first usage of the wedge, and ended around 100,000 years ago. Lastly, the Mousterian tools were made of flint and were used by Neanderthals from 160,000 to 40,000 years ago. Back to Homo erectus. They were the first hominins to escape Africa, and after doing so, they migrated everywhere from the Middle East to China and down to Indonesia. From Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis developed, living from 600,000 to 200,000 years ago and having a cranial capacity of 1,250 cubic centimeters. From there, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and the ancestors of modern humans evolved. There was interbreeding among these three subspecies of Homo sapiens, resulting in humans of European descent having some Neanderthal DNA, and humans of Southeast Asian descent having some Denisovan DNA. There is even evidence of another undescribed subspecies of Homo sapiens that interbred with the Melanesians. So, that sums up human evolution. We share a common ancestor with all other living primates, evolving from a common ancestor with chimps that lived about 6 million years ago. A series of ancestral forms link our ancestors with that common ancestor, and an Australopithecine lineage led to our own genus, Homo. From there, our genus diversified, eventually giving rise to us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Well, there we go.
What a show. I sounded really excited about, I think it was Australopithecus africanus.
You did. Oh, and look at the folks who show up in my What to Watch Next.
Oh, hey, those are all my, or a lot of those are my videos.
And we see RJ hanging out in there.
With the guy on the middle left.
Oh my gosh, there's an RJ. Oh my heavens, I'm up there too.
That was Steve.
The screen doesn't crack.
Yeah, the guy in the middle left. That was Steve. He was a nice guy. He was a creationist. I talked to him. He asked me a very interesting question, which was what evidence would convince an atheist of the gospel, and I said find us some historical evidence independent of the Bible to verify the story. And he was just kind of like, huh, interesting.
And then I would throw in and have all the stupid parts that were already in the Gospels not be there.
You're pretty picky.
Hey,
You're
that
pretty
bottom
picky there.
right video is it Hank Green, isn't it? Hank and John Green, they do the like crash course videos. That's one of his.
Righty, on that note,
It's a very good.
I guess we can probably just about wrap it up. Oh, geez, what am I thinking? Plugs. RJ, plug.
Oh, yeah, my usual plug. I got a bloody website where you can find links to my GoFundMe's, my books. Everybody buy them. They're damn good. I'll put the thing up in the thing if I have permission to. The website, and you can all find all the crap right in there. I'm doing the Troubles in Paradise project, where I'm working out for the very first time all the different sources that anti-evolutionists use and vaporizing them with a great deal of relish.
There we go.
I say I'm volunteer supported. The 2 books, that means the writer gets royalties, and plus you get a really good book, and of which we've got a bunch of people here in the room who have been reading my books and therefore can tell you about their opinion of them.
Indeed. A really good book. I've read Evolution Slam Dunk. It's very good. I like it a lot. You guys should read it too.
What he said. I concur. And
I use tip for every single one of my videos.
There you go. Yeah, that's.
Thank you. Yes, it's and both you and Jackson are excellent exemplars of that methods approach. You came to it naturally. I hope to think that I kind of jump-started a even more honed approach.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it works.
I think you should be able to look at my sources for my videos and see that it goes towards or the earlier ones. I think more focus on like secondary sources, and later ones are focused more on primary sources. I mean, heck, the video you just showed, I was literally reading a book I have on paleoanthropology for that one, basically like a textbook on
Yeah,
paleoanthropology.
and what it does in practice, because it forces you to go to primary material, it improves your case. No longer are you drawing upon somebody's view of something. You're now drawing on the data directly, so you know more about it and can respond more effectively. And it puts you ever farther ahead of the creationists because they ain't playing on that field.
Indeed. And RJ, I don't know if you're still looking at the public chat. Old Scratch says Evolution Slam Dunk is a great book. Thanks, RJ. So looks like you're getting the word out. And
It's slow going. I need way more people to deal with it. Everybody who does know about the books can contact magazines or journalists or other people that and do reviews. I'd love it if Kirkus or somebody of these other places would actually pay attention to it and call attention to it, because I need every bit that I can. If I can get up to the point in future where I could get a regular publisher, second edition with illustrations, as Christine Janis suggested, and I still am piling up masses of material on that, so I'm ready to spring if I can get to that stage. But at the moment, I'm still in the scraping by, barely able to get by 1 week after another, never quite knowing what's going to happen next. And therefore, everybody out there that can help.
Indeed, and help we should, because as you know, one thing RJ is famous for is giving out information for free to anyone who asks for it, and publishing it, making it easily accessible to anyone who wants it. All right.
I just make YouTube videos. If you guys want to see more science stuff like that video, go check out my channel.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. And
And
okay,
ditto
now
for Evolution Hour, which is on Wednesday. I do things on specific questions. If people want to put that to me, I can do a thing. This Wednesday is going to be on retro engineering, biology, and fossil predictions.
I will be there. Very nice. And all right, there's Paul. Who doesn't know? You know what? Let's have him say it. Paul, who doesn't know you, but please tell us anyway. Tell us about you.
I have a YouTube channel, Paulogia, Paulogia. If you are interested in Genesis Paradise Lost, 2 scenes had leaked earlier on, and I actually did full debunk videos on those. So if you're looking for more somehow on this film, those might be of interest to you.
All righty.
I follow you, and I would be plugging down money to help you if I had it to spare.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining the panel. Thanks everybody for watching us. Yeah, Jackson and I basically went to see this abomination, so you won't have to. There you go.
Everything we've told you is the entirety of the movie. You really didn't miss anything except some interesting CGI
and bananas.
And bananas.
And bananas, yes. To know that bananas are in there along with grass-eating sauropods just does my heart proud.
Indeed. With Ray Comfort sitting right there.
He's biting his tongue. He doesn't want to interfere with Genesis. So
so it would seem. All right. Well, let's see. Plug and pug. We've done the plug part. I guess it is time for the pug part. So, that being the case, thanks everybody. Had a great time as usual. So we'll switch back to our traditional movie theater. And it's pug time. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Pug.
There we go. Little happy pug face makes it easier to try and forget that movie.
Of course, cute pug.
This song is endorphin.
Oh, Fino's got a good idea. This movie would make a great movie night, wouldn't it?
It would be more of a movie weekend, I think, the way the
actually,
yeah, there'd be a lot of drinking on it though. To be able to actually see all of the crowd doing that though, to see the mentions and all the rest, and Jackson, and yeah, there would be a lot of drink.
Yes.
Drink.
I find myself wondering if there's enough beer in New Jersey.
Well, I drink iced tea, so there it is as well.
I mean, I drink.
I think the only one where I actually
soda.
had some booze was one where I had a leftover sparkling wine that my niece gave me for a birthday present, and so that was one time where I actually was a little bit of alcohol under the belt. But I still keep rational.
Jackson, the drinking, the consuming of alcohol is only recommended. It's certainly not mandatory. It does, however, it makes the stupid much more palatable.
Well, I'm going to have a discussion there with, going to go for it about the logo that he's coming up with me. So, au revoir, and thanks for the show.
Thanks, RJ. Good of you to join us. And Jackson, Paul tells me that the Canadians would not tolerate this foolishness in their country. So we had it down here. Paul was unable to attend this movie.
You did not miss anything.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to somehow wait until it's on home video.
I mean, it'll probably be on Netflix eventually. You know, probably.
No, I guarantee they're gonna want to not be on Netflix until next year. They want to have Christmas sales for this.
I bet that it's gonna be on F movies if it's not already.
Well,
you know how this
on
works.
Netflix, so I'm sure that's the path they're looking for.
Oh, it's B movies now. Okay, because they keep changing it on me.
The DVDs are going to be out next week. You know how this works.
Paradise Lost.
Good night, all.
Genesis, Paradise